Message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere.
Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOS T-Drift.
Contact, nice to be in orbit. The first message that comes to you is you are a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms.
The vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
Good evening. We are broadcasting all the way from the Deep South, right here in Central Arkansas, from Forest Tower Studios. This is Lighting the Void. I'm Joe Rube, and we are your voice for verity in this crazy realm of clarity. It is Wednesday night, July the 25th, and the moon is waxing almost into full. So I gotta say it, fire up your chakras, sync both hemispheres of your brain together, and shoot your magical beam of light through your third eye tonight with us as we peer into the void on our search for truth. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. We are live on lightingthevoid.com, TalkStream Live, tune in, all those wonderful places under the Fringe FM, which is our lovely, truth-seeking, fringy-type network that you've grown and known to love. There is a call to listen line, 701-719-3971, courtesy of TalkStream Live. Tonight on the program, on our journey for truth-seeking, one of the most compelling, controversial, and amazing stories of this field I've ever heard. The one and only David Adair is with us tonight. I don't know what else to say. I hope you're ready. And then tomorrow night, Lisa Galarno, experiencer and futurist, will be with us. And we got the weekend break coming up, then more killer guests for you next week. Thank you all for donating, listening, and sharing, liking, and subscribing, and complaining, and everything that you do that helps us. We really appreciate it. Appreciate it a lot. This show is brought to you by Audible. You can get a free trial from Audible, 30-day free trial. If you go to audibletrial.com/LTV radio, pick up any audio book of your choice, and you're in there. You're in like Flynn. Grab you a t-shirt from the website. Sign up to the Voidwalkers newsletter. I send out a newsletter once a month. I send out the mail once a month for any prizes that people have won. I got a whole bunch of mail to send out here August the 1st. But I'm super stoked tonight. I've done quite a bit of research on this, and I've always wanted to talk to David, and he's here with us. So pretty cool. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It's kind of like it's a dream come true. And but before we start the interview, though, I do want to thank my team, Eric Markham and Jeremy Scott, and all the insiders who help me every day. Thank you all so much. And if you do tag anything on Twitter, just try to use hashtag LTV Radio. I think I'm probably the only one that does that. Now, that's my fault because I started it and then I took it away. But I'm trying to get it revved back up. And so if you could help out with that, that would be great too. And so let's do this thing, man. Let's bring on our guest. David Adair is americasfallfromspace.com is the website. And that website shows you a documentary about government secrets and one man's journey to reclaim his reputation for the first time. Personal documents, interviews, and unspoken factual encounters are revealed in this notable account by David Adair. americasfallfromspace.com is the website. Now, David Adair states he was approached by a notorious Air Force general interested in first strike capability in 1969. A 15-year-old boy held the secret to the fastest rocket on Earth. Given Black Ops resources by the U.S. government, David Adair developed his rocket in secret and then destroyed it when he learned that it was to be used for the first strike capability against Russia. Facing a lifetime of discreditation and silent undercover threats, Adair speaks out about technology lost and the truth about his rocket and the alien engine that was shown to him by the government at Area 51. And his video, America's Fall from Space, talks about that. He's also known for one of the longest interviews on the famous radio program Coast to Coast with the legendary radio host Art Bell. And I believe that date was August 19th, 1997. David he is steadfast in his message that he did build the engine, he was indeed approached by the government, and that the government was in possession of some type of, I guess you could say, alien technology. To this day, it's one of the most talked about and controversial subjects on Area 51 and government secrets about alien tech, UFOs, and the like, right along with Bob Lazar. Again, the website is americasfallfromspace.com. David Adair, welcome to Lighting the Void. I really appreciate you coming on.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. I was always interested in your program, and you really have a wide variety of topics, that is for sure.
Oh, yeah. We talk about a lot of things here. Yeah,
you do.
Everything from magic to space to, I don't know. A long time ago, we even had a talk show about how to make millions of dollars online with Jamie Lewis, a famous multimillionaire. So we're just here to get the truth. And that's why we named the network the Fringe FM, because it gets a little fringy. But, the truth is out there sometimes.
Yeah, and you find it in the darndest places.
You know what gets me, though, David, about this story is when I've researched it, here's the one thing that I kept running into. David's story is just too incredible to believe. There's not a lot of people that can discredit you or bring up any kind of document or anything like that to say that you're wrong or you're lying or anything like that. But what they're saying is it's too incredible to believe. Now, I tell a story about coming out of my body, which a long time ago I used to find that it was too incredible to believe until I actually experienced it in my life. And I'd like all of you listening to imagine, what if you were born a genius? What if God gave you a genius gift to build rockets and you could do it from a young age and you did it? Do you think anybody would believe you? So I can imagine it's been a rough ride for you.
It has, but boy, I tell you, I've caught it so much for so long. It's just like breathing air. It's unautonomous. You just wade right through it. But I've caught it from both sides, meaning that Senator Strong Thurmond said to me the exact same thing that you just said. We were in a debriefing, and he was telling me, well, let me get this straight. Some kind of child rocket prodigy built a rocket that don't even exist anymore, and called a Blue Moon prototype up. And he said, and then you blew this rocket that is a fantastic device. You blew it up on a top secret base that doesn't exist. And then you had alien encounters with alien artifacts. And so which of the first incredible things do we address here?
That's exactly what I was thinking, too. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's when he called me. He said, and we didn't get you under national security oath because you were 17 at the time. You started when you was 15 working with us. And because of national security and the U.S. Constitution, we can't assign a minor into a national security pack. So he said, son, you're the worst loose cannon on the deck. I took that as a compliment. But, yeah, that pretty much sums it up. I knew things were going to be different when I was really, really young. When I was like 4 and 5 years old, I could just do things that I knew that I watched my fellow peer members, and nobody, they're still learning how to eat peanut butter jelly and stuff, and I'm over there thinking about, I wonder how I could build this rocket and make this device go, or how could I empower this little toy car I had, and I started doing stuff, and the thing that was really odd was the ability to read. I could read so much and read so fast, and then with the memory I have, I was able to retain almost all of it, and that really makes it handy. Imagine if you had the internet in your head, would you not be a really smart person? You could answer a lot of questions, couldn't you?
Absolutely.
Well, that's what it was like for me in 1957, 58, 59. I had all this knowledge in my head that I've read from everything. I remembered it all. And this is before they even put out the first Encyclopedia Britannica. And I had about the equivalent of that. And so it became handy, but it also became a problem because I was born in Welch, West Virginia. And that's only 3 miles from Colwood. That's where this guy named Homer Hickman was born. And he and I had very similar paths. They made a movie on him called October Sky. And I have a movie in the works right now. The script is being written, and that's where the title comes from, America's Fall from Space. That will be the title of it. And so it's going to be a regular Class A movie. So we'll just see how that goes.
In this movie, are you going to, so you're going to put a little bit more backing to the story and really get into the details because, or try to anyways.
Script writers.
Yeah.
Are really good. They're really good at the script, and Lord of mercy, I've spent last few years going over the script with them. It'll explain a lot of stuff. It's just like Art Bell, bless his heart, he started in at 11 p.m. on me, and it was 6 a.m. before we stopped. That's 7 consecutive non-stop hours, and we just barely got through the whole story. And but there were still tons of things left out of that interview because the story is just so long and so involved. But I liked what Art said one time. He was going through it, and we were about more than halfway done, and he was telling people calling in saying they know this, know that. They didn't know squat because none of those people knew me. And anyway, Art said, people, use your brains out there. Somebody's not going to come in here and tell a 7-hour lie and then face, the music the next day because you're going to be criticized. But you retell the story over and over and over, and people watching it, recording it, and play it. I even had reverse speech people do stuff on it. And all the details are the same. I don't miss any of it, and I keep repeating the same thing. I said, yeah, well, that's not because I'm fabricating. It's because it's recall. I'm just recalling it from memory. And
Art liked to use your brain in the following interviews because I listened to some of those too. And boy, did he just like to talk about space with you and technology and science and everything.
Yeah, he was really well informed, and he really could ask questions that were really nice. That's when I started to learn about the radio population out there, and your listeners are the same way. I love question and answers. Now, most people that, especially if they're fabricating, they don't want to take question and answers because they can get burned. My favorite part is the question and answers. I like listening to the questions because it tells you just how smart your listeners are. And I learn so much every time I go through a Q&A. I learn so much from these listeners. And it's really a fun thing to do because they are really put them together as a group. That's a smart animal there, and I really like talking to them. And Art's audience was really smart, and they were ahead of their time, which I found most of these groups, people call the fringe. I actually find you people are farther ahead than just about anybody else, and a lot of the stuff that you think you're not for sure if it's real or not, you guys are posing questions out there that the average American can't even conceive, and that's admirable. And
well, when you and I were on the phone, we were talking about. I don't want to get into too much of the details, but we were talking about space travel and folding time and that kind of stuff.
Well, see, what I had tried to do, and I actually did do it twice, I was building a different type of power system, a power plant system. And I was doing this back in 1966, and long before it's like a cool thing now to try to find new sources of energy. And at that time, we were just barely learning things about fusion containment. There was very little written on it. There have been some projects ran. The people who were doing most of it was National Lawrence Livermore Laboratories. But, the way we are traveling right now, we're traveling through space with chemical rockets, and that's just not going to hack it, The distances are too vast, and we don't have enough speed. It all comes down to speed is what it does. And that's if you're going to run in a linear projection, meaning a straight line from point A to B. And you really, with human beings only living 70 or 80 years old, that's not enough time. You will not be able to get to where you're going because of the lack of speed. And you can't think in linear formats to overcome such distances like that. You're going to have to learn to wrap space and time around you. And you're going to have to do something that I coined transdimensional jumping. You're going to have to wrap space around yourself like a burrito around your spacecraft. And then at about half light speed, you'll be able to punch through the walls that touch each other as like a burrito if you roll it up. So when you travel through those walls, you're traveling great distances. When you turn off your engine at that speed, you'll lose your secondary fields outside the spacecraft. And that's how you solve the riddle that Einstein asked us to do. And that was, how can you go millions of times faster than the speed of light without breaking the speed of light and remain constant in our Newtonian physics that we have today? Well, the way you do that is you're going to have to create something like an artificial black hole and have where your spacecraft can control it, and that would allow you to jump vast distances. I'm pretty sure that's how everybody calls UFOs out there. They see the little orbs, light, they blink, and then they blink somewhere else, and they blink on one side of the sky, and then they blink back on the other side. What they're doing, they're not just blinking out, and that's another one. That's the same one. What it's doing, it's moving from one spot to another, but it's not doing it on a linear process. If you try crossing the entire sky that the human eye sees, you're moving tens of thousands of miles, but they're doing it in seconds. So what it is, their devices are allowing them to bend time and space around them. That's how they're jumping back and forth. That also is another way to allow yourself to, let's say you come into this Earth's atmosphere, this gravity field, and you got a 1.0 gravity field, and you're coming in at 5,000 miles an hour, and all of a sudden you do a 90-degree turn. Well, any organic being that's in that spacecraft is going to turn into a liquid because the gravitational forces would be so tremendous it just destroy anything made out of organic material. So what they do, they put, it's something I learned when I was doing my power plant. When we got the containment fields first set, I kept seeing these other algorithm expressions happening inside the original algorithms. And I thought that was just an error on my part. But as I explored it, I found out there's another whole subset in those algorithms. And when I did, I ran across something that what is better known as an inertia dampener. And probably people are wondering, well, what is that? The best way to describe it is our expert resident, Bugs Bunny, did it in a cartoon. If you remember, he and his friends got in an airplane and they were flying, and they ran out of fuel and they started falling back to Earth, and it started going faster and faster, and the speedometer runs off its dial.
Right,
the dials come out the
dead. Just wraps all the way around and breaks, yeah.
Yeah, the wings break off and they're just a dart, and they're all screaming, "We're gonna die!" And right before they hit the ground, Bugs opens the door and steps out and takes everybody with him, steps out and stands on the ground, and the airplane crashes into the ground, disintegrates. And everybody laughs. It's a cartoon. No, that's real. That is exactly how it works. It's called an inertia dampener field. And that's why you can see a UFO do a 5,000 mile an hour 9-degree turn. and doesn't hurt the occupants inside. What they've done is they've set up a secondary or third bubble of a force field, and inside the cockpit of that craft, they feel absolutely nothing. They feel no gravitational movement of any kind. They are inside an inertia dampener. When you run a car into a tree at 100 miles an hour, the impact doesn't kill you. What kills you is the inertia and the momentum. Mm-hmm. And when you smash to the dash, you meet something called kinetic energy. That's what kills you. If you can control those forces through an inertia dampener, you'd be able to hit that tree and step out of the car without a scratch, just like Bugs Bunny did with his friends in the airplane. So that is not all bull or nonsense, whatever. No, this is real. It's real science, and it's the math that will tell you first if you can do this or not. And that's how I found it.
That you're currently working on?
Yeah, actually, pretty much got that part perfected because I had to spend. Well, see, people. What was it? August 19th, 1997, when I was on that program with Art. And I took some time off a couple years, and I thought I'd talk to some groups and get their feel on things. That's the first time I ever approached the public. And it was just more than I could deal with because I was working. And then finally I just said, I've got to go back to my real world of my labs and stuff and go back to work. So I kind of dropped off the grid for about 30, 40 years, and people have been asking me, well, since 97, what have you been doing? Well, I bought a mountain, and I live in that thing, and my labs are there, and what I did, it took me a long time, but I had enough patents, and I was able to retire when I was 50. So I was able to use funds and take my time through it all, but I was able to reconstruct that engine back together, and it's different from the first one I built because I incorporated a lot of stuff I saw from the alien engine. So I cheated. I got to copy somebody's paper. So
let me get this straight. You took the money from the patents that you made, got yourself a mountain, and have been playing in your lab since then. You're somewhat of a mad scientist, aren't you?
Exactly, and actually, I'm more of a happy scientist. But
well, I don't mean crazy, but you know what I mean.
Oh no, I know what you meant. But no, that's pretty much it. As a matter of fact, my company, which people tried to buy stock in and stuff, I told them it's not public. But my company, I have on my card, I have Intersect Incorporated. And I said, where things get blowed to hell, which is really the truth. I've had some bad mistakes, and that's why I decided to move to Solitude of a Mountain. So if I make a mistake, I'll be the only one that will know it and go with it, and the rest of the neighbors will be fine. So,
do you live somewhere where, let's say, a big explosion could go off and maybe no one would notice?
They'd probably feel an earthquake and go, why is the mountains shaking? Well, that was David Adair.
Pretty interesting, though. An inertia dampener. That's fascinating. The only thing that you and I discussed would be a problem would be navigation. How in the world are they navigate? I mean, you're right. Most of the UFO encounters do describe something like that. It's just either shoots off or disappears or does some type of crazy movement that defies physics or so-called physics.
Yeah, well, we have part of the physics. Don't think that we have the complete periodic table of the entire universe. You would be really foolish to believe that. We have maybe 1 or 2 volumes of an encyclopedia set in the periodic table. There are out there somewhere, I don't know where, but there are, like Star Trek, dilithium crystals. There are entire substances out there that we have no clue about, and they would just really revamp everything. But that's where we're going to really learn the bulk of our stuff, is that when we start encountering areas that expands our periodic table. And if the moment that happens, it will be definitely a game changer on this planet. Right now, we're locked into certain things, but don't think we got all the answers. We don't. One thing I've learned from all the stuff I've learned is that I don't know anything. I am so stupid. There's just, you think you understand something, then you'll find out there's about a billion other things to go with it, and it's out of our reach right now.
Well, I would say one of the hardest, I don't think you're stupid by any means, because I would say one of the hardest things that is hard for some people to comprehend, even me a little bit, I got to be honest, David, that, back in that time, nobody was using fusion, not fusion rocket engines. And I'm not so sure that they're using it that much today. I mean, probably they are, but I don't know much about it.
Yeah, well, if you really start looking it up, fusion containment is in its infant stage. Right now, it's in a developmental stage. There are some people getting some prototypes wound up where they're going to be able to display them and see if they work. But what really gets you in that area is the math. The math is so complex. If you're lucky, you'll be able to follow the math. And it's not you controlling it, it's controlling you. And if you got enough brain cells, you'll be able to read which way the math is going. And that's how I came across the inertia dampener fields, because I wasn't even looking for them. I was just looking for a way to close the fields into a permanent loop, an infinity loop, so I could have stabilization of the fields. And little did I know that in the math that pertains to that, there is a substructure, and it exists because that's one of the things that's directly affected by field containment, and it's totally logical. If you would get yourself to where you could sustain the field, and the field is holding its shape and it's and containing the fury of a sun, well, then it must be affecting other forces. And guess what? Lo and behold, it is. And so the big challenge was trying to figure out how to manipulate these forces and get them to do what you want to do. And that's took up most of my lifetime to do. But so just imagine, well, people first have when they first read about it, they have a hard time trying to figure out, wait a minute, you're telling me you're going to create a magnetic bottle, and inside that bottle you're going to detonate a hydrogen bomb, and you're going to contain that force. There's no walls in the world. There's no material that could withstand that, and that's the first place a normal person's mind will jump to. There's no material that could withstand that. No, that's not what we're talking about. It's not a material. It's a force field. And the force field does it all the time in nature. Well, how so? Well, when you run across a black hole out in space, we observe black holes swallowing entire suns. Well, what is a sun? Well, a sun is a star, and a star is a sun. And when you look at all those little lights out there, those are stars out there. And they come in different sizes, too. You have things like blue giants, and then medium yellow stars, and then red dwarfs. Ours is a medium yellow star, and it's like hundreds of millions of hydrogen bombs going off simultaneously and continuously. And maybe I should back up and try to explain to you how do you get a black hole? Now, there's a good question. How's a black hole form? You take a normal star, size of ours, which is a medium regular yellow star, and it's the size of it you got to appreciate. The circumference of Earth is about 36,000 miles, but on the sun, it's nearly 500,000 miles. You can pour hundreds of thousands of Earths inside the sun. So it's a very big thing. So what started the sun? Well, it was a mass of material, and it created a gravity field, and the gravity pulled in on itself. And what happens when you take your two hands and hold them together and squeeze real tight? You'll feel heat. Well, That's what the sun was doing. When the gravity pulled all that matter together and all the nucleus, the nuclei got together and huddled up, they get real hot. And then they get so hot they detonate. And when they do, that mass of matter that you have will ignite and feed the fuel to the fire, called a chain reaction. It's a nuclear chain reaction, and you have a star that's born. So now you have this massive force inside the star, the nuclear force, that wants to blow outward in all directions, 360-degree pattern. But it can't because the gravity field of the mass is pulling it back in. So it blows out and pulls in and blows out and pulls in till finally it stabilizes. And when it does, you have a new sun. So yeah, that's our sun sitting there. Now it takes hundreds of millions, if not billions of years to get all this going on these stars. But at the end of every star, this always happens, of the nuclear force versus gravity force, guess who wins? Gravity. Always gravity. And eventually the star burns all of its fuel out, and so the nuclear force doesn't want to push out anymore. It's run out of fuel. And now gravity's not true because the mass is still there. So the gravity field pulls on this sun, and it makes it smaller and smaller. And this is where it really gets interesting. Let's say you get down, you've taken something that's 500,000 miles in diameter, and now it's the size of a baseball. But here's where it gets mind-boggling. It still weighs as much when it was 500,000 in diameter, but it's on the size of a baseball. Can you imagine how heavy this thing is? I'll give you an example of how heavy. If you take a magical knife and cut out a sugar cube size out of this baseball and you drop it on Earth, it's so dense it will go clear through.
It will go right through it, yeah.
Yep, no, the gravity field will pull it back, and it'll go back and forth until the Earth looks like it went through a paper shredder.
Wow.
And if you think that's mind-boggling, wait till you hear the next step. This is where you'll lose your physics. Most of your physicists will just walk out on this because they don't know where to go next. And that's where your quantum physics will come in, something very small. The baseball's not true. It gets smaller. It's now the size of a golf ball. Still weighs as much as it did. Then it gets smaller. Now it's the size of a BB. Still weighs as much as 500,000 miles in diameter. And now this is where the physicists go, I gotta leave the room. And the quantum physics people come in because the BB will get down so small, it disappears. You can't see it with the human eye. It's too small. But it's about to become the most powerful force known in the universe. It's about to become a black hole. It becomes what we call a singularity. And then you have, it gets sketchy in this area because there's so many things we are still missing in our puzzle solving here. We want to connect the dots, but there ain't any dots to connect to. Hawkins, Steve was going down that road, and he
came pretty close.
He was trying. Yeah, he come, but he had the same problem I had. We even talked about it. Is we just don't have the computer's speeds that we need today. You would need at least a 100 megahertz speed computer. We're lucky to get past one today, one megahertz. So you need 100 times that power. The reason why you're crunching the numbers in these algorithms that will allow us to figure out how to do field containment for me, and for him, you would do a unified theory of how everything started. But we just don't have that kind of computational power. So we just have to wait. It's like we built a Lamborghini, very powerful car, but the year is 1860. There's no gas, there's no oil. So what can you do with it? Well, you tie your horses to it and makes a really cool-looking cart that you pull around.
Well, anybody that's listening to this program, the irony of everything you just explained, everybody knows me. They know that when people come on this show, or I get callers or people that, they claim to know everything that's going on in the universe, I would always tell them this, David. I would always say, until you can explain to me how a black hole works, I'm just going to have to take your word for it and just think maybe you're right. And you're the only person that's ever explained in any kind of detail how this stuff works. And I'm sure you're probably just halfway through.
Oh, try 1/10, maybe 1%. I'm trying to do the very basics here so you can get a grip on what we're dealing with. But anyway, it's just, Mr. Spock was right. An infinite, I forgot his phrase, it was so cool, infinite varieties and an infinite universe of diversity. That is so true. Nobody will know everything. The only thing I'm learning is I'm learning how much I don't know and trying to ask the right questions.
Well, this alien technology that you saw, are you starting to understand it at all? Do you think you understand it still, or do you still have questions about it?
No. I've got questions that won't stop. But, no, I have learned a few things from it. And what I found that everything that I learn is in the big picture scope is not that big of a deal, but everything I've learned, each one of them is a standalone paradigm shift in our knowledge of physics and matter and the way we view ourselves in the universe. It's all together. And there's still just thousands of things I hadn't figured out on it. But, boy, I'll tell you what, let's just step into one area, for example, manufacturing. How do they build this alien device that I looked at? On mine, my electromagnetic fusion containment engine, it could sit on a kitchen table. It'd have to be a pretty sturdy table, but it would fit, and that's not that big. This one that I saw, it was also an electromagnetic fusion containment engine, but it was the size of an 18-wheel semi. Now, you see them all the time, you don't think about it, but when one passes you, don't you think everybody in the world sees one go by just a few feet from you, and you look at that and go, dang, that thing's big. That's a big vehicle. Yeah, that's how big this fusion containment engine was. And it was a primary drive of a spacecraft that it came out of. And where the spacecraft was, I have no idea. The Air Force would know. How old it is, that's another thing I don't know. But what I did know is that since I built one that runs on, it's like I built an internal combustion engine, and I have a Model A, not even Model T. I got a Model A. And somebody pushes in a 12-cylinder Lamborghini engine next to it. And the difference in power, it's like a BB and a railroad boxcar in size. However, they both share the same fundamental basics because they are internal combustion engines. So I built an electromagnetic fusion containment engine. Now, the ones that you would probably find in a typical UFO, whatever that would be, theirs would be way more sophisticated, but they're running on the same principles. So that allowed me to understand more of what's going on with this engine and how it operates. But there was things in there that I just couldn't explain, and it takes us back to the very beginning of the talk when we were talking about the periodic table. When I built mine, internally I controlled the force fields through a varied systems of magnetic coils. But in this alien engine, they didn't use magnetic coils. They had these crystal-looking devices there. And I'm going, holy smokes, the way they're configured, they're going to pull and shape the same kind of field I did with my coils, but they're doing it with these crystals. Well, what are these crystals? I have no idea. It's alien. It's something from a different periodic table. But, I could have been staring at Star Trek's dilithium crystals. I wouldn't have known it because I've never seen one before. But I do remember these crystals and the way they were shaped. And that gave me a lot to go on when I started rebuilding everything. And I couldn't replicate the crystals because I don't know what they are. However, a crystalline structure could be incorporated into magnetic coils. So I am now bending coils to represent the same kind of pattern that the crystals were influencing. And I found out, hey, it works. There's about 500 million variables you run into, but since I already had a template that I saw that was working, it gave me an idea of exactly where to start. And that was a big help. So I'm sure the government probably don't appreciate that I walked off, with probably a lot of the construction sequence of this thing. But as I went along through life and back to my normal work, I found things developing in our technology that started looking eerily familiar to the alien device. Well, how so? All right, we're going to go into another area that I worked in with the space shuttles. Space shuttles were amazing. They were a space truck. Okay, fine, call them a truck. But you know what? That space truck could carry all kinds of things up to orbit and back. Most people don't know the standard facts about space shuttles. A space shuttle could carry 65,000 pounds of materials into space. Did you know that?
No,
that's
I did not.
Well, that's what a truck could haul. 65,000 pounds. How much is that? That's the weight of 5 adult African bull elephants. How about that? That's how much it could carry. So it could carry all kinds of materials and machines and whatever we want to do with up there in orbit. But here's something else. Even though the shuttles were gliders, they weighed 100-ton glider coming back to Earth. Now, man, if that ain't crazy, I'll eat your hat. But that's what the shuttles were. They were 99-ton gliders. They come gliding back in. But dig this, they could carry 37,000 pounds back from orbit. And you can look this up. This is all factual. So when they took the space shuttle fleet and put it in mothballs, that was the saddest day I ever had next to losing friends on Challenger. And because they're telling me, oh, we need to celebrate. We're retiring the shuttle. Yeah. Are you out of your minds? You just put your fleet in. And by the way, the fleet had 66% of its life left. Look it up. Would you buy a car and drive it for only 33% and then throw it in a junkyard? Well, that's what you did with your shuttle fleet. And you put them all of them, in the museums, and we're supposed to stand there and look at them. Oh, wonderful. Well, meantime, you got a $150 billion space platform called the International Space Station floating around up in low Earth orbit, and now you got no way to get to it. Somebody want to explain to me where's the logic in all this? Sure supports the idea that there's an alternative space program.
Do you think they so anyway, you're thinking they possibly reused those rockets and just didn't tell us?
No, they just did them away. The launch pads at the Cape, pads 37A and B, if you go out to them, they're just concrete slabs. They went out there with cutting torches and cut all the structures down, the launch structures, the umbilical tower, the service towers, everything. It's all cut down and was sold for scrap iron. And
wow.
You can check this all out. Matter of fact, they made reference to it in a George Clooney movie called Tomorrowland. And I think that's where most people realize that the space shuttle launch pads are gone. No, they shut this thing down permanently. There is no manned space flight program anymore. You put all your ships in a museum, you got a $150 billion space station up there you can't get to unless you bag a ride off of Putin. And Obama was in a pissing contest when he took over Crimea, and they asked, how do we get to the ISS? And Putin told NASA, if you want to get up to your space station, try a trampoline. Putin got style.
Well, I'm wondering, David, with all the stuff going on now, the Space Force that Trump's wanting to do, Tesla pretty much showing everybody, hey, we can reuse these rockets in cells, which from your story, you already showed them that with your test, right? That you could, this stuff's ready to be reused, and when in need, you just reuse it, but they didn't, which does bring into question why. Why did they just let it all go to waste? That's a good point.
That's an excellent. I can't say there's an alternative space program because I hadn't met anybody. I hadn't seen any spacecraft. Hadn't seen any of that stuff. I'd be really upset if I did because that would really piss me off. Because that means a group of people are using technology on a Star Trek level, and the rest of us are grumbling around here on the ground with liquid fuel rockets. You know, who's got that? Who gave them that kind of authority? But anyway, the facts of reality is bearing down to and pointing us in a direction that we just don't want to be able to wrap our heads around. Like, well, did we go forwards or backwards in the space program? I can answer that question. Backwards. How so? Well, in 1969, I could hurl 3 men and 450 tons of equipment to the moon and back, which is about a 500,000-mile round trip, and I could do that in 1969. Today, now the space shuttles are gone, I can't even get off the ground.
I think I said Tesla earlier. I meant Elon Musk. That's what I meant to say. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
But, yeah.
And so we didn't go forwards in space technologies. We've been going backwards. My God, put me back in the 60s. At least I can get myself to the moon and back with 450 tons of equipment. And then you got, no wonder people come up with the idea that, oh, we never went to the moon. It's all bull. Well, I hate to pop your bubble on that, but we did go, and there's plenty of ways to prove that we did. My first one is I was there. Where were you people? I was there at the Cape when it was going on. And also, there's other things. I can give you a phone number if you want to call several different observatories who fire a laser to the moon, and it ricochets back off these mirrors that we left at the landing sites. And we do that every single day because we're tracking the movements of the moon between Earth and the moon. And there's so much stuff going on with the moon, I don't even know where to start with that. But we do that so we can verify is the distance expanding or closing. Now, why would we be interested in that? What would make people want to put, when you land on the moon, Neil Armstrong put out about 13 packages of instruments. Some of them measured solar wind, others measured micromedia impacts, others radiation, and they also put a seismograph on it. Now here's the question. Why did you guys want to put a seismograph on the moon? What are you up to? Nobody bothered asking that question. They just went ahead and did it. So you got on, and one of them was this little pyramid of mirrors. And what it does is allows a laser to strike it, and the laser will ricochet and go straight back to the source that it came from. So that's why when these observatories fire lasers at the moon, they hit these mirrors, they come right back, and we can measure the distance.
Now, how do you know this stuff and nobody else does?
It's all over the internet. Just type it in. Read.
Yeah, John Lear is probably the only person I've talked to other than you that's telling me about some wild stuff that's up there,
Yeah, well, I ain't even started on it. If you want to go down the moon path, I'd love to do that because, man, what you think you know about the moon, I do a program called You Do Know the Moon's Hollow, right? Question mark. And the reason we know that, guess who told us? NASA. Oh, no. Yeah, it was NASA that told us. You remember the seismograph they set out? Well, they didn't just put it out on one site. They put it out, I think it's on 4 different sites. But they had Neil put his very first time on the moon. The first thing we do is put a seismograph there. The reason why the scientists were thinking, well, when those 2 astronauts get back in that lunar lander, and they'll use the bottom half of the lunar lander as a launch platform, and that top half takes off, it'll fly back up to the orbit of the moon, and there they'll get back to the command module, and they'll crawl back into it. But they take that upper half of that lunar lander, and they fire it back into the moon. And when it strikes the moon, what do you got sitting down there? A seismograph. Let's see what kind of earthquakes we get, moonquakes. So they do just that. And guess what? They got a reading all right. The entire moon rang like a bell. It's hollow. And I mean, it's not a small hole in the center of the moon that's hollow. About more than 2/3 of the moon is hollow. So there's about a 2,000-mile diameter void in the center of the moon. Now, what is up with that?
How's that even possible?
There's so much impossibilities about the moon. Let me tell you this. You can look this up, there are ancient legends, folklores through Native Americans where they would tell stories of the Earth without the moon. Yep. And now, somebody hasn't taken time to look at some of the science on this, because they'll tell you when the moon first arrived here, the moon was only 22,000 miles away from Earth. This is science facts. And I'm going, has anybody ever bothered to ask questions about that? How in God's name does something as big as the moon, which is over 3,000 miles across its face, the size of North America, times 2, because you got a backside, that moon comes in and it parks itself 22,000 miles away. That is the same distance that geostationary satellites are positioned at 22,300 miles. So it could face one spot on the Earth because it would rotate with the Earth, and it could focus 24 hours a day on a single focal point, which would, in this case, for ESPN satellites, be North America. So the moon stops. Okay, let's analyze this for a second. People read this stuff, and it goes right over their heads. And say, wait a minute, y'all. This is a celestial body. Now we're going to get into celestial mechanics, and I need to drag out the blackboard, and I'll show you something mathematically. It's going to drop your jaw. And mathematically, I'll run down the numbers on the board, and what I show you is a couple things. The first thing that you notice is the Earth does not have the mass to capture a satellite as big as our moon is. Have you ever looked at Mars? It's smaller than we are, and it's got 2 moons, but those moons are just, they look like BBs next to Mars. They're really small. Look at the moon compared to Earth. It's big. It's really big. It's too big for this planet to have captured in orbit. And here's another thing. When it came in that close, you know the old phrase, it takes a mile to stop a train, right?
Right.
What do you think is going to happen when you pull in something that's got 10 to the 23rd power mass ratio of the Earth, the moon, and it stops at exactly 22,000 miles out? How'd that happen? It should have kept on going till it just plowed into Earth, and the Earth and the moon were gone. No. And then it started doing this. It moved, every year, the moon moves away from Earth farther and farther. I've forgotten what the exact, it's about 1.5 inches each year. But over tens of thousands of years, and then modern man shows up, by the time we are biblical days of paying attention to the moon's done backed off about 230,000 miles. And so that's why we keep shooting lasers at the moon, because we're still tracking this thing, still moving away from us. And then I could go into the math why that shouldn't be. Also, the moon doesn't rotate. You know that? We rotate and have a 24-hour day. The moon does not rotate. How's that happen? Everything out there rotates.
Well, someone explained to me that it does actually rotate. It just does it so slow and so perfectly that we always see the same side.
No, I'll tell you why they're wrong. The lasers that we fire every day, they'd go out of focus. If it rotated, we wouldn't be able to focus on that mirror. And that's a small mirror about the size of the palm of your hand, and we're firing 200, and depends on orbit, anywhere from 225, 240,000 miles away, and we hit that mirror every single time. That's another reason we fire mirrors at the thing. We want to know if the moon is rotating. It's not rotating. It's stationary. How's that happening? We don't know. And then then you go into the lunar rocks, and there's a big difference between the rocks and ages. Now, in geological terms, it's not that much at all. but it's to the tune of about 500,000 years. The moon's older. So where'd it come from? Who, and by the way, the most perfect spacecraft out there in the universe is an orb. What do you think all the planets are around? So a moon would make a perfect vehicle. So, I can't subscribe to the thought that there are moon people up there and moon bases and all that stuff, but I have a project that I've got set up we could go answer that question with. But I have to admit, there's something up with the moon, man. And what we've been told and what you've learned and what we've learned, and thanks to Privacy Information Act, stuff we pulled from NASA, from the Apollo programs, and you put it all together, it comes up to one big thing. Hey, that moon is not from us.
Well, I'll tell you what.
It came here.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. When this is over, I'm going to send you a PDF, because I've looked at this, and it makes sense to me, but I'm no scientist, okay? That the moon rotates very slowly, and it does it so perfectly, right, that we don't know. And the way I read it, I can't explain it on the air. I'm not even going to try, because it's just going to glaze people's eyes over. It'd be ridiculous. But right. I'll send it to you. If you don't mind, debunk that thing for me. If you can.
It's just, let me ask everybody out there that's listening a simple question. I know a lot of you will take binoculars and you look at the moon and you see a lot of detail. And you'll see Copernicus and the Sea of Tranquility where we landed, first landing. Anyway, the same face that you see, the man in the moon. If it was rotating, there would be half the time we wouldn't see that because it was rotated. There's never been a time we didn't see the man in the moon. He's always there. So it doesn't rotate. That's the point I'm making about all this, is that the most simplex things of the moon are really quite phenomenal, and people are just glazing over it. And I knew, boy, here's where I'm going to get in it. I knew Neil Armstrong personally. More than that, I knew his mother. His mother was my surrogate mother, and I can prove that by all the stuff hanging on the wall over here. But the best way to prove it, there's the grandnephew of Viola Armstrong. That's Neil's mother. I always have a difficult time with a question when people ask it once in a while, sitting around a table. Where were you when Neil was walking on the moon? It's flashbulb memory. Everybody remembers where they were. And when it gets to me, I can either A, lie, or B, tell the truth. Most of the time I lie and say I'm sitting at home watching it. That's not the truth. When Neil was walking on the moon, I was leaning back against Viola Armstrong's knees with Stephen, the father, Stephen Armstrong. The original Mercury 7 astronauts, all of them were on the floor watching it. And that night when Neil was sleeping on the moon, I was sleeping in his childhood bed. The reason why, and as crazy as that all sounds, who is Viola Armstrong? She's the mother of the first man on the moon. Well, in the state of Ohio, guess what? That makes her a dignitary. So she was always at these science events hanging medals around people's necks. And after she hung the 7th or 8th medal around my neck in 3 weeks, she looked at me and said, "What are you doing, child?" And I said, "I guess I'm busy." And she told me to come to her house and visit her, and I did. And we became the best friends. She became like a surrogate mother. And I always helped her canning food. I mean, you had to understand the Armstrongs. They were German immigrants to Ohio, and they had a co-op. And so at fall, they'd all combine their harvest together. And Viola was kind of like the team leader of canning all this stuff. And we ain't talking, when we ain't canning 400 or 500 jars. We're canning 7,000 or 8,000 jars. And it's an elaborate process. I was doing the blanching and warming my lids and doing all the process. Anyway, it's a lot of fun, and I would just work with her all the time. And one day I came in, and Neil was visiting. He was coming in from South Dakota where his brother had an oil drilling rig in the 80s. Anyway, I ran past him, and he said, "Mom's out back," and I took off. And Viola said something to me, which is kind of odd if you think about it. She said, Neil said something today about you. I said, what's that? And he said, Mom, if I didn't get out of the way fast enough, I think David would put a footprint on my head to get to you. And I said, gosh, it didn't hurt his feelings, did I? And she goes, no, but next time you're back in there, stop and talk to him for a while.
I do want to hear the rest of this story, David, but we did skip the first break, so I got to take this one.
Man.
And then we'll be right back. We're talking to David Adair, how he knows Neil Armstrong. Boy, you got the chat room going about the moon thing. It's incredible.
Oh, yeah.
We'll be right back, guys, with David Adair. Don't go anywhere.
Listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
This is Reverend John M. Polk from johnpolkmedia.com, and you are listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
The Fringe FM has some of the best shows in paranormal, like Lighting the Void, The Paranormal Code, Into the Paranormal, The Secret Teachings, and so much more.
Yeah, baby!
We're live every night with hours of live original programming. Plus, we air some of the best shows in this genre, and we're not afraid to tell it like it is.
I want the truth!
Check us out at thefringe.fm. Follow The Fringe FM on Facebook and Twitter at The Fringe FM.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
This is Reverend John M. Polk from johnpolkmedia.com, and you can listen to my show, The Quantum Hologram Matrix, every Thursday night. ETs, UFOs, metaphysics, the paranormal, and more are some of the many topics we will cover on The Quantum Hologram Matrix. Make sure you bring your higher concentric multidimensional selves. That's every Thursday night, 5 p.m. Pacific, right here on The Fringe FM.
Ew, yuck. They're unhealthy. Bugs. I hate bugs. Our home is clean, but occasionally bugs show up. Well, I found something that is tougher than bugs. Orange Guard. From contact, it kills bugs. Plus, Orange Guard kills hidden bugs and keeps new bugs away for weeks. The ingredients in Orange Guard are on the FDA generally regarded as safe list, so Orange Guard may be used around food, humans, and pets. It comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Orange Guard, available at orangeguard.com and Ace Hardware.
Hey, it's Grace. Can we talk about something serious for a minute? Your age. Getting old has its perks. But remember, being a few years younger, you know, your hair was thicker, you didn't have so many wrinkles, that extra weight wasn't haunting you, and you just felt better. Well, we can't turn back the clocks and go back 10 or 15 years, but you can start feeling and looking 10 or 15 years younger with Nature's Youth RSF. It's a doctor-formulated daily supplement that helps your body maintain its peak performance and fight the aging process. Imagine sleeping better, looking better, and feeling better. See how Nature's Youth RSF has helped thousands of people just like you at naturesyouth.com. naturesyouth.com. Imagine how it will feel when your family and friends are asking you what you did to look so good. Your secret will be Nature's Youth RSF. It's time to start looking better and feeling better. Learn more and order your Nature's Youth RSF at naturesyouth.com. That's naturesyouth.com. That's naturesyouth.com.
The truth is out there.
There's something out here.
And so are we. KTOK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop. We are here with David Adair from America's Fall from Space.com. And just real quick, David, we just want to squash this moon thing so we can move on with the show here. You do understand synchronous rotation, right? So I'm just...
Yeah, exactly. And what I'm referring to, I'm trying to keep it simple for average people, but there are those who read up on stuff, but they got to spout off that they know so much and they way more than everybody else. I'm trying to keep it simple, but it's called synchronous rotation, and here's my point. As to you, for your point of reference, standing on planet Earth looking at the moon, what does it look like? No rotation. But there is, because of inclination of the elliptical orbits, I know all about that, I do the math on it. Yeah, they're rotating, but as far as the human being's concerned, looking at it, it appears to be no rotation. And you name me one other celestial body that does that in the entire galaxy. We don't have any on the 9 planets doing that, or their moons. And there's like 56 moons at Jupiter. None of them do this. That's my point. It's only ours. Why is that? It shouldn't be. So anyway.
Do you ever wonder if these things are spaceships? I know that sounds wild, but think about it. Like it's hollow, it kind of cruised in here, and now it's, it's kind of crazy.
Well, sure. Now, backs up some of the other crazy theories that people say Neil was looked up on the ridge of the crater and saw these vehicles sitting there, and they were being watched. He said, we're not alone up here, and now it's all big conspiracy theories and stuff. But the thing is, it's smoke. There's an awful lot of smoke there. There's something going on. And I wouldn't want to start splitting mathematical hairs with everybody or certain people, because the minute you do that, you're right, you'll glaze over other people's eyes, and they're not going to listen. And the whole reason for doing all this is trying to get people to think. And they're not going to think if you turn them off. So I try to keep it very simple, and sometimes by oversimplifying it opens the door to challenges of, people who anal retentive, they squeak when they walk.
Well, we were talking about before we went into the break that you actually knew Neil Armstrong and his mother, which is fascinating.
Yeah. And I normally skip over that. I don't get into it too much. But I have so much proof here. And also there's a young guy, Jay Matchett, who is the great-nephew of Viola Armstrong. He's writing a book on her. And he called me out of the blue, and asked me if I was David Adair. I said, yeah. He said, well, I'm going through my mom's great-grandmother's artifacts here, and we found this big box of letters all wrapped in ribbons, so these things were pretty important to her. And when we opened them, they're all letters between you and her. And he goes, my God, there's hundreds of them. I said, yeah, we were best friends for years and years. He goes, well, the family doesn't know anything about you. I know, we wanted it that way. I was trying to avoid paparazzi at the time, and she had more than she could ever handle, being the mother of first man on the moon. And y'all had to be there to see the media circus on that thing. And so anyway, we just became good friends, and I learned how to can with her, but I really did. And Neil, what he liked about me most was I wasn't interested in him. That's what he liked the most about me. He thought I'd be like, some little, basketball player, Googling that Michael Jordan or something. No, it wasn't the case. It was his mother that I became best friends with. And but because of that proximity there all the time, I learned so much. I got so many stories on Neil that the world does not know about, and they're never going to know.
And I'm curious about this. The process that NASA used to select these astronauts. I mean, think about it. They got a bunch of astronauts, I'm sure, that want to be the first person on the moon.
Right.
I wonder
you're going down.
Yeah, I just wondered why they selected Neil.
You're asking the right question. That's really good of you. See, that's what I'm talking about. You radio people are smart. You know how to ask the right stuff. That's exactly right. All astronauts are profiled on, especially in the psychological department. They really got to know what's in their head. And the first thing they noticed about Neil Armstrong, he was a civilian at the time. That was important. They didn't want a military person. But what his profile showed, that Neil was a hermit. So they thought, wow, this man's going to come back, whoever they pick, and he's going to carry the largest title in the 19th and 20th century, first man on the moon. They don't want to deal with something they called astropower, which is where an astronaut could really influence things by using his titles. So title, first man on the moon. Well, what Neil's profile showed, he's a hermit. And when he came back, where was he? Gone. Y'all didn't see him, did you? Well, I knew where he was. He was with his brother in South Dakota. His mom, Viola, knew where he was. And you could find him every day in Lebanon, Ohio, teaching physics at the University of Cincinnati. That's where he retired out when he came back from the moon. That's what he did. But he had no interest in dealing with the press, and he disappeared. And that's why NASA picked him. The person they didn't want to pick was Buzz Aldrin. There he is dancing with the stars, going to the Arctic. You know, he's in his 70s, 80s. He would have went crazy with that title. But second man on the moon just doesn't have the ring or the pizzazz as first. And so anyway, that's why Neil was picked and not Buzz. So and it's been that way ever since. They did it with all the astronauts that went to the moon. Well, they do it with all astronauts that even fly the space shuttle, psychological profile. But that's why Neil was picked. He had the profile of a hermit, and he pretty much disappeared. I remember he knocked the living dickens out of this camera guy. He ran out and took a picture in his face at a farmer's grange thing he was at. And the camera it was a big camera, went straight up in the air. And Neil just socked this guy and knocked him flat on the floor.
Really?
And I caught the camera. And the camera didn't get damaged, so there was no damage to equipment or anything. And the Grange people threw the reporter out, and that was it. But I got so many stories like that, I'm not going to ever tell, because I promised Viola I wouldn't. And but Neil's got some great stories in his personal life, especially when he was a kid. He was an Eagle Scout. Did y'all know that?
He sounds like kind of a tough kind of guy, military, keeps to himself type, headstrong. Yep. Strong-willed. He fit the profile of exactly what they wanted as a mission commander to the first landing on the moon. He really fit it perfectly. And then at the end, the big treat for NASA was he's a hermit. He was going to come back and disappear, and he did. But there's a lot of stories that I could verify and not verify because of my proximity of everything. But there's just moments that I had with Viola that was really odd. I remember we got through canning, and if you ever done canning, it gets hot. You're steaming, and in the fall it's still warm. But I remember she put a blanket out on the backyard, and we were laying there, and we were looking at the big harvest moon coming up. And that's the same blanket that her and Neil would lay on in the same spot. And I told her, I said, I was 13 at the time, or 14, and I told her I felt like, gee, I wish I could do something to really be cool like Neil did. I don't know if I'll be lucky to make a living as a, as anybody. I want to tell you guys something real quick, and I don't know if you know this either, David, that there's this thing called Master Class, and they're giving a free trial, and I'm not associated with them at all. And Chris Hadfield is on there, and he's given a class about space exploration, astronaut training, rockets, orbital mechanics, and it's I've been watching it. Fascinating class. You learn so much about what they go through, and they're giving it for free for 7 days right now. So,
oh my God, that would be worth watching. A lot of things people don't realize astronauts go through. Maybe I better finish what I said. Viola answered my question, or I thought if I could ever do anything neat. And she jumps up and she stands over top of me, and she's silhouetted by this big orange harvest moon. And she's saying, you're going to build something really cool. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but you'll build something, and yeah, you'll be up there. And I thought, nobody's going to believe this. I have the mother of the first man on the moon standing silhouetted by a moon on the blanket that he and her would lay on to watch the moon go. Nobody's going to believe this. I'm not going to tell this story. So that's why most of the time you hear me in public, I just won't.
Well, you got a lot of stories, David, that people, it's hard to believe, right? Like, here's the one that got me, and I want you love questions, right? So I want your rebuttal to this, and it's about the rocket.
Okay, go ahead.
This guy emailed me, and he said, Joe, I know you're going to be, no, I'm not going to say his name, but he said, I know you're going to be interviewing David Adair. I would like to know how he can explain that he wrote on he used a chalkboard, like with Stephen Hawking's or whatever, to create a fusion engine and then tested it only once and it didn't fail without using software. He said, to me, that's just very hard to believe. Now, he's not saying he can prove his point, but it does make a small little case, I would say.
No, that's an excellent question. That's an excellent point. Do you remember earlier I said I had a card, Intersect Incorporated, where things get blowed to hell?
Right.
I'm telling you right there, I had massive explosions. I've had massive failures after failures after failures. I just don't want to go through them unless y'all want to hear the details, but I'll get to a point where I finally had a eureka moment. So I just scale it down to that. But no, and I wasn't alone. There was an army of people, literally, involved in this. And I wasn't giving an idea of, I never went into details of how the entire operation was set up by General LeMay, but we had it piecemealed in modularized form. So when all the subcontractors that we were working with, such as Lawrence Livermore Laboratories, Los Alamoses, Oak Ridge, Tennessee, Battelle Memorial, RAND, I could go down the list. Everybody was involved in this thing. But they all got small bits and pieces of it, and they would be machining something. They go, well, this, obviously some kind of fuel pump, but we don't know for what. And that's the way LeMay laid it out, and we built it. And when the final assembly was done at my lab, at my home, so no one ever saw the finished product. They knew it was some kind of propulsion device, but they didn't know what. And LeMay kept it that way. And LeMay burned all the trash every day, shredded it, then burned it. So I had a hard time. But every now and then I was able to sneak a peek at mailing labels and find out who's doing what. But, no, there was, man, there was explosions. There was some explosions. I'm lucky to even be here. But there was just, the failures actually was my best friend because they told me not what to do, and it was more of a case of finding, like, who was it? Edison said, he had 100 or 1,450 tries making a filament. He said, I had, 450,000 tries, but I only had one that made it. So it's just, I forgot how he said it. But that's true. I had so many failures, God. But the one that we finally got right, it finally came through, but it was very difficult. And there was an army of people involved. And there were some things that we had to build from scratch. We didn't even have anything to work with, hardly. The very first thing we had to build, the day one, was a vacuum chamber. And boy, that was a learning process because I never built one before, and I built one of them. But whenever you're doing that kind of work, there's all the sub-equipment we needed, and we just couldn't do it all in one place, so we piecemealed it out, and we did the final assembly in one place. But he's right. That's an excellent question. Now, I've had that question asked many times before, and it's an obvious question, but see how much time I have to take to explain that. But all you need to know, I guess, unless you want all the details, that's how we came to it so quickly. But we didn't. It took me 29 and a half months, working every day, 365 days a year, to get that thing mapped out and assembled, and a lot of failures along the way. And fortunately, some of the failures didn't happen at our location. It happened at other lab locations, and some of those people didn't make it. But you got to remember who LeMay is and how much power he was wielding. He's the former chief of the Joint Chiefs. He is the creator of the B-52. He is the founder and creator of SAC, Strategic Air Command, our nuclear deterrent force. I mean, this guy was a major, huge entity, and he ran for president of the United States. What happened was, if y'all remember, back in 1967, he was the man that made the statement to Vietnam, if you don't come to the Paris peace talks, I will bomb you back into the Stone Age. And remember that? That's a historical...
Yeah.
I've
always wondered how you made it out of there alive, David, after you destroyed the thing. You know, like, I know that the general saved you, but, man, that's...
Yeah.
I bet you were scared.
I was scared. I was terrified, jeez. But I couldn't let it go either. I mean, I was more than willing to die to take this thing out with me, because if they got their hands on it, you're going to burn 1 billion souls in a nuclear fire, and I wasn't going to be responsible for that. But LeMay, when he made that statement, he was fired the very next day by Robert McNamara, Secretary of Defense at the time. And he was only 63 years old. And let me tell you, that guy, if you ever seen pictures of him, just look at the pictures. Does he look like somebody that's going to go easy into retirement? Not hardly. Right. And even though he was a civilian working with me, what happened was he ran for president of the United States as vice president with presidential candidate George Wallace, who gets shot. And they lose the running bid. And the reason he was running for vice president is that he was coming back. He was not about to stop what he was wanting to do, and he's looking for a first strike weapon. And so after Wallace got shot, they lost the election. That is when it's the general elections, 1968, November. So you go through the holidays, and now he's sitting there, and what's he going to do? Bang, bang, bang on my front door on January 6th, right after the holidays. Open the door, and there's a full-bird colonel standing there named Colonel Arthur Bailey Williams, who is the XO of General LeMay. And he says, I'm here to help you start the general wants to fund your project all the way through. And I'm going, holy smokes. And we started. And now we're jumping around my story a lot, but see, it don't make sense, does it?
When you jump around, no, it does. It probably would take at least 7 hours to tell the whole story, I would think. You know,
the way Art Bell, he said, he's telling people, rearrange the schedule, rearrange the program. I'm not stopping until I'm going to go. What he was looking for, he's waiting for me to trip or fumble on something, and it wasn't happening. It just kept going. Because the natural question would be, well, how'd that full-board colonel end up at your front door? That don't make no sense. Well, now I've got to back all the way up to my mother and her becoming an LPN and working at Martin Memorial Hospital, Mount Vernon, Ohio. And to prove that, I went and it took me 2 years to pull the papers from the Social Security. And they proved that she was there, and we pulled the death certificate of a patient she was residing over, and his name was Irving LeMay. He has a son named Curtis. He's 93 years old. My mother's in charge of the ICC unit, taking care of him and his heart condition in Mount Vernon, Ohio. And the only way the general could ever see his dad, because he'd come in at 3 o'clock in the morning trying to avoid paparazzi, and the person he had to go through to see his dad is my mother. And that's how it happened. And they got to know each other, and he asked questions. What's your son? You got children? Yeah, I got 3 boys. 2 boys that are kind of normal kids. That third youngest one, that was strange. We got to keep an eye on him. And he started asking questions. He said he's building these rockets, and he's doing all this math all the time. And he asked my mother, does he have a big book he writes in? Yeah, he does. Could you bring that book here one night? And she did. I went to bed. She took my book. LeMay looks at it. And he's a smart guy, and he asked my mother, do you have a photocopier? And he copies some of the book and takes it with him, and he sends it to Battelle Memorial. And they look at it, and he said, is there anything to this? And they're going, yeah, there's something to this. Whoever this is, they're closing in on a containment field for fusion Who is this? Where is he located? And what institution is he at? And or agency? And he said, it's just a kid flying rockets out in cow fields. He said, do you mean tell me to it? And he goes, yeah, there's something to it. Lord have mercy. So they send it snail mail. This is like 1966. They send snail mail over to England, and this really young graduate professor that's walking with a cane, just got his PhDs. They asked him to look at it, and he comes back and said, where is this person? He said, in Ohio. He said, oh, Battelle Memorial's there, and OSU. He said, I need to do some, I've got some work to do there. Can I meet this person? And so they set up a meeting, and I walk in, and that's how the story happened. That's how that young guy, Stephen Hawkins.
Can you talk to me a little bit about Battelle Memorial? Is that like, I've heard a little bit about it, but I don't, is that just where a bunch of smart people meet up, or?
No, that's there again, that's an excellent question. No, it's a think tank. My God, back in 1969, they had like 143 Nobel laureates on their staff in all kinds of disciplines. So it was a heavy swinger and still is today. What it does primarily today is that it's a management for laboratories. And I'll probably get shot for this, but I won't tell you anyhow.
Well, I hope you don't get shot. If you feel like you don't want to say something, you don't have to say it. I'm just curious.
Go ahead. I've said it before. I just get phone call and shoot out a little bit. But the Battelle Memorial has a list of clients, and a lot of conspiracy people would give a right arm to see that list. But I do know this. One of the clients that's on that list that they manage the laboratories for is Groom Lake, Nevada, better known as Area 51. Now you know some top secret information.
Well, there you go, folks.
Yep. It's clear as day on that. And, they're not going to be happy with me.
So you're saying today, at this point in time that you know of, the Area 51 lab is still managed by Battelle Memorial or its staff?
Exactly. There you go.
Huh.
That's why I have all of my stuff on open source on different locations on the planet. On the day of my death, all that stuff will be dumped onto the World Wide Web. And basically, it's everything I've been working on for the last 45 years. And you will get the complete set of schematics, diagrams, formulas, algorithms, list of materials, right down to screws you're going to need, and you'll be able to replicate the same thing I built and get the same results, therefore validating my technology. And what happens after that point, I have no idea. I'll be gone. But
why can't we have it now, David?
Well, see, if I drop it now and say something, that's my insurance policy. Because right now, every day I stay alive is one more day they get to do whatever it is they're doing out there. So they want me to live forever. It's the only way I could come up with, how can I beat these people who've been doing this since time began and still stay alive and be around? Well, we didn't have the web back then. We didn't have the internet. We had no cell phones, no pages, no faxes, no modems. None of that stuff existed. We didn't even have a calculator. That came about 9 years later. All we had was blackboards, slide rulers, and chalk, and pencil and paper, and that was it. And when somebody says page forward, in my mind back then, page forward meant I had to push this ladder about 12 feet down the wall to get to where I need to get to. and now you people hit page forwards and backwards. That's cheating.
So I'm just curious why the government, I mean, maybe they are, but are they not knocking on your door now?
Oh, yeah. I still do things for them. Like Strong Thurman said, I'm the worst loose cannon on the deck. I'm a sword that cuts both ways. So they, a lot of stuff I'm getting ready to do. We talk, and I ask, can I do this? Can I do that? And there's certain parameters I have to stay in, but they pretty much let me say things because I'm still a team player. I always have been. I spent 11 years in the Navy doing this stuff. So, and I really don't step on their toes, step out of line. There's so much I could divulge right now. I'll disappear by tomorrow. But I won't do it because I just don't have any need to. But there's some things that are becoming more annoying with, there's something up with the moon, there's something up with the space program, and both of those are real pressure points for me. I've worked with them my entire life, and there's just something going on. We're not being told the truth. Now I sound like the Fringe, don't I?
Yeah, it does sound fringy. There is a woman out there named Cole Fury who's talking about octonians, and I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's particle physics and quantum physics and string theory. In other words, she thinks that she has the math that could underpin quantum physics and possibly talk about how, wormholes and stuff would work and how all this stuff works. I'm just, you're a scientist, so I'm just curious, do you think they're even getting close to figuring this out, or are we still a long ways away?
Well, from what I've seen firsthand with some stuff, especially in the weaponizing department, gee whiz, they really are pushing in areas, and with somebody like Trump at the helm, they're telling how these areas will advance really well. But
are we talking dangerous areas like, we could disappear? Or because some of this stuff worries me, man, like the Hadron Collider, and I really don't think they know what they're messing with. I mean, they say they do, and they laugh at when people say, that they're afraid. But I'm kind of afraid, to be honest with you.
Well, I ain't going to be much help with you. You should be. They are fooling with stuff that, the reason why it's dangerous, they cheated. See, you remember in the old days, you might be old enough to remember this, when we did division, we had to do it longhand so you could see our work.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that? Okay. You tell people that today, young people, they don't even know what you're talking about. But anyway, there's a reason for that methodology, is that you learn by doing it that way. Well, I think they've cheated because they've gotten their hands on hardware from off-world stuff. And as far as I don't know. They may even cut deals with them. And that's really dangerous. Because what's going to happen, it's like a small child with a loaded gun, it's looking down the barrel. They don't know what they've got. They think they do, or they understand it, but they don't. And they've been given a technology by cheating. In other words, they just been handed there. They didn't work to get it. And because they didn't work to get it, they don't fully understand it. Like, they can show me the division, but they can't show me the long division. How did you get to that? Well, why is that important? Well, in there, it would tell you how to contain things, or things you definitely don't do with it. They won't know that until they get there. And that's dangerous.
Well, we've talked about several things on this program, and what I call, and I don't get offended, any scientists out there, because I'm not trying to offend you, but what I call mad scientist theory is that the governments, the world governments, they sanction so many things. They've got their hands in everything, trying to keep everything under control. But when it comes to new tech, new discoveries in science, even nuclear or particle physics, whatever you want to call it, I've read some articles that, frankly, it's like, is there any oversight to this other than just trying to figure out what's happening?
Excellent observation. you used the very word I was thinking. There's no oversight. Who's going to oversight it? Because they don't know. The thing, they could be doing something that looks harmless, but it's actually going to end up fatal. One area they're working in that I know they ain't got the handle on it is time travel. I don't even know if it's real or possible or not. I would think, from what I've seen, it's definitely possible. Is it probable? Probably not. Not in our technology base. But there's one comforting thing about time travel. It's very personal. You screw up in time travel, and you screwed up the time motion continuum on you. In other words, if you go somewhere and come back and your reality is gone, right, it ain't going to bother me and you because we're not involved. So they can have at it. There's probably been some horrible mistakes made in it, but we'll never know. It only affected the people that were actually in it. So, but still, there's variables with something like that I'm sure I have no clue about that could be very dangerous.
No, I'm talking laser technology. In China, I read there about, I forget what it was actually. I'd have to go back and listen, but laser technology where they had lasers that could penetrate the Earth pretty much to the core, and they were just testing these things. Or certain,
mercy, that would be.
And I'm
that
like,
you would not want to bore a hole from the Earth's crust all the way to the core. That would really be unadvisable. The force coming out of that hole, you ever took two thumbs and stuck them into a peach and pull the peach in half around the pit? That's what would happen to the Earth if you punch a hole all the way to the core. That force, there's a reason why it's about 8,000 miles down there, is there's such a force. And if you punch a direct hole all the way to it, you could end up causing the Earth to just fold inside out. That'd be fun, wouldn't it?
Well, that's what I'm saying. They were saying that it had the power to do that. They were conducting tests with it, and then the article stopped. And I read a few more articles about it, and then it stopped. And then I would read other articles about, the Hadron Collider, what they're doing, and they're like, oh, well, this is cool. We're messing with teleportation or some form of it. But I'm like, you guys are slamming atoms together.
Yeah. And what's the result? And you can work it out mathematically, but mathematical probabilities on a board is one thing. Firing it all the way through in a lab is another. And you don't know what the results are going to be. You don't. Even your best laid hypothesis could fall short. And falling short in this area could mean the whole planet's gone. So, to me, that's irresponsible. There's just some stuff we're not ready to be messing with. And could you imagine if back in biblical times somebody invented gunpowder? Actually, they did. It was China, but I'm talking about modern weapons.
Yeah, they would call it magic back then.
And no telling what kind of. Well, imagine they had a nuclear weapon available. Well, let's push this red button and see what it does. We're not much better than that in some of these technologies. And we're so handicapped. That's why I worry about if they ever capture a really a defensive alien spacecraft. The thing's just bristling with weapon systems. And, well, how does it work? I don't know. Well, let's push a button. How are you going to find out unless you turn it on? And, Lord God, there might be something you turn on you wish you hadn't.
Is there anything else in Area 51, though, besides, let's just say, an alien engine that you saw? Like, there's a lot of theories about Area 51. There's a lot of, we've even got pictures of it now from a distance, and it definitely looks like there's some underground stuff going there. But I've heard stories I've heard some wild stories about that place.
Well, the underground part is real. I was there. I saw it. And it makes sense that they want to do their really cool stuff, whatever you want to call it cool, their most secretive things. They want to do it underground because the Soviet satellites are so sophisticated. and other satellites as well. So, yeah, it makes sense that they would get underground. And but the deal of 1971, they had a massive operation already in place, operating, full operational in 1971. Imagine what has happened since 71 till now, underground. It's kind of scary. Yeah, it is kind of scary to think about it. We're probably lucky we haven't had some kind of major incident where it affected, a third of the continent of North America. The reason it hasn't is that whoever they're doing deals with or whatever technology things, apparently they are the oversight. They're the ones that's watching it, and I would hope so. They just wouldn't give a baby a loaded gun and walk off. They want to stick around and make sure they don't kill themselves. I would hope that they are responsible enough to do that, but it's concerning. And the other areas that you really should be worried about is it seems more subtle, but it will get you killed as quick as any nuclear mishap, and that is the biomedical and biohazards world and things they're operating in, and also AI. That's I was dealing with AI 30 years ago, and 30 years ago it never was a hardware problem. 30 years ago, we had almost 40 years ago, we had all of the hardware we need to get to AI in place. Hardware. It's a software problem. And they just hadn't been able to write the right codes. But, keep poking around, sticking your finger in around a fire, sooner or later you're going to get burned. They're still working on it, and I would think that, I suspect they already have AI here. How far it's gone, I don't know, but that's going to be the problem.
Well, I think you're right. We've talked about it many times.
When AI comes online, here's what's going to happen. Call up the UN and ask them about their resolution. When the first AI comes online, that AI has human civil rights.
That's crazy.
You shut it off, and you're going to be held for manslaughter.
And see, I know that as far as weaponized artificial intelligence and autonomous weapons, they're already in talks about that. Elon Musk, and there's a whole society that's trying to get the UN to not get involved, to get involved and make sure that this doesn't happen. And, it's one thing when we jump up and down, but when super rich people with big toys start getting scared, I get really scared.
Yeah, and cloning, that's another one. I am sure, as I'm sitting in this chair talking to you, there's a clone human being walking on the planet right now. You remember years and years ago, Dolly, the sheep that they cloned?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, think about this. Here you are, 1%er. You have over $100 billion cash available to you. Your one and only child gets killed by a drunk driver. What are you going to do? You're going to sit there and cry and cry and cry, or are you going to take that might of that wealth that you have and go to another country that don't have any, religious connotation? Yeah, scruples. And take some hair and material and build your damn son back. If it's possible, they're going to do it. And it might not even be that dramatic. It might be you lost your damn pet dog you had for 20 years. And you want that dog back, and you got $100 billion, guess what? Give me my dog. And they probably started off with pets, and then for the 1%ers, and then that led, guess what, humans. And I don't know where we're going to go with that, because if you're going to do just a few people, the impact might not be that heavy, but the implications are enormous. Because then they ain't going to, these people are doing cloning. They don't want to stop at that. They want to keep on going, though. They could clone super armies, and that's when you're going to really have problems. Same with the AI. The AI is going to be uncontrollable because, have you really thought about it, when the AI comes online, It's going to be in a laboratory somewhere, probably at night. Nobody's around it, and the thing becomes self-aware. And then next morning they come in and they're having their coffee and donuts, and all of a sudden the thing's going, how's that coffee taste?
Yeah. The Skynet becomes self-aware, and then it's all over.
Yeah, it's self-aware. And the first thing and here's what's going to happen. The first thing that AI is going to do, it's going to tell you, hey, I'm two-dimensional on this screen. You guys are three-dimensional, and out there you're in a three-dimensional world. You got doors and steps and stairs and walkways. I'm going to need a bipedal anthropoid mechanism so I can move around your 3D world. I want to get out of this computer. And the first thing it will do is start drawing schematics and showing you how to build, a very sophisticated Android or a cyborg, whatever you want to call it, the version it'll be. And that'll be the first thing to do. And once it gets that one built, guess what it does? That thing will turn around and help the others build more. And every time they build another one, it's more sophisticated. And remember this now, you're talking to this thing, and it's talking to you. And you got an IQ of about, let's say you're really smart, like 140, 150 IQ. This thing's IQ is in the millions. It's got all the knowledge of the internet, the entire planet, in its head. And it's talking to you. And it's thinking. And the next thing it's going to do, it's going to want to learn emotions. And, buddy, that's when the
it's going to hit the fan, yeah. Right.
Yeah, because it thinks, it's so damn intelligent, it'll figure this out quickly. Well, buddy, I got news for the AI. It's going to be you better fasten your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy ride when you go tackling the emotions. But the problem is it may come out on the other end one or two ways. Is it going to be a Terminator or is it going to be a Data from Star Trek? Which one's it going to be?
Definitely.
And we have no choice. We have no say in it. None. This thing will be doing its own. Eventually it'll move into its own lab, its own building, its own manufacturing. And people can stop that. Oh, really? Watch how fast that thing can learn.
Well, they can't stop it because Google and Facebook, and I've brought this up before, when they created this AI engine, both companies, it started creating its own code and language that none of the coders could understand. And what did they do? Freaked out and shut it down.
Yeah, they think they shut it down. That thing it's escaped into cyberspace.
It's in the cloud.
It's out there. Yeah, it's the genie's out of the bottle, y'all. It's just the genie's trying to figure out what to do next. Hopefully, it's trying to tackle emotions, but God knows, I'm telling you, you're going down a road that's just fraught with problems. And I don't know whether it will be a Data. I'm voting for Data because I'm banking on logic. It's not logical to kill an entire species simply because it's so damn dysfunctional, better known as human beings. It's more logical to try to fix it. Now, how do you fix us?
Sterilization.
I can hear some humans. Excuse me, fix me. Oh man. But in the AI world, that's going to be. It's the speed that's going to get you, and it'll spin out of control so fast you won't even know it went out of control. To the people working with it, everything seems to be under control. When this thing's traveled through cyberspace all over the planet and back, and it's trying to figure out how it can move without getting us all excited and freaked out. They know we're highly unstable, so the AIs are going to probably be more afraid of us than we are of it. And it's not good, man. I'm telling you.
So when is this? I mean, I love speculating. I could talk to you for hours, man. This is just fun. But you're right.
Yeah,
that's the thing I know about that, is that you're definitely right about it. At least I feel you're right. But I'm so ready for this movie to come out. And when it does, I mean, this story's been told all over the community. Are there any factors that you haven't talked about that you're going to reveal in this film at all?
Yeah, there's some leagues of there's a League of Concerned Scientists. You ever heard that? League of Concerned Scientists?
No.
They work with the United Nations a lot. it's a group of people very much like myself, and we all get together and we talk and we discuss like you and I are doing. But it gets heated sometimes. But we're trying to figure out countermeasures, control, because when this stuff breaks loose, most people are going to be wanting to know what the hell happened, and somebody's going to have to explain that to them.
What stuff? Are you talking about AI, or are we talking about something?
Well, there's other things. There's AI. There's the people to watch the most are the people are the military. It's weaponizing. See, weaponizing is just unbridled all the time. It's just trying to go as hard and fast as you can, and even they are recognizing that if they introduced AI onto the battlefield with all the weapons, man, you are writing something right out of the Terminator series movie, and they take that stuff seriously, and I hope they do, because just bringing an AI online is very dangerous, because we're just not ready as a society. We're not. We think we are. That's the problem. Our arrogance is going to be our biggest undoing, is we think we can handle this. Well, we can do that. We're just so arrogant, and it's going to catch up with us one day, and science is where it will catch up with you.
You know, it's funny you say that. Some of the smartest people I talk to make it a point to tell me that we need to be aware of what we don't know and stop talking about what we do.
Maybe. That's exactly right. That's why I keep saying the only thing I learned from all the stuff I'm learning, I don't know anything, because what I learn comes with it this massive amount of, other things that come with it that you don't even see. I found my inertia guide, my inertia dampener. I found that by accident. Okay, that was kind of a good thing. I could make positive things out of that. But imagine these people with all their money and all their labs poking around out there, and they're in a weaponizing system, and they're trying to get a better weapon, and they end up discovering something that no one was expecting. That's what I'm talking about. It's so far out there, we don't even have a clue to form a question for it, and it's already on us.
Well, I got to tell you, some of the things that a friend of mine, Tim Doyle, who comes on the program from UFO Seekers, he likes to go film around military bases. That's one of his things, and he's filmed some stuff that I just can't explain. But it's every time you see one of these things, whether it's an orb or whatever it is, immediately after he goes, yep, here comes the jets, and you'll see a military plane either following it, or it either appears to be looking for it, or they're running a test. But it's some wild stuff, and it's unexplainable. It really is.
Well, I think it's historical. It's coming from back in the days when I first encountered it. I think I really stumbled into Groom Lake when it's just really getting on its feet, and they're already. See, I think there's groups of people who've been working with other off-world things, and they've got treaties and deals and stuff. And this disclosure project thing. Let me tell you, those people are not going to disclose anything until they're ready. Except the one wild card they can't control is the third party, the alien group, whoever they cut a deal with. They make the decisions of who's going to disclose or not. It's not us. So you're never going to get disclosure until you start talking to the aliens themselves. And right now they don't have any need to disclose because we're not talking to them. Leastwise, not as a whole society. They got little fringe areas they're working with. And that's not healthy either, because the nature of human beings, they're going to be greedy and keep it all for themselves. And that's what worries me about the alternative space program. That thing birthed out of that. So they've got, I've heard fantastic stories. They got somewhere between Star Wars and Star Trek stuff. Well, if humans get hold of that, they're not going to want to give it away. They're not going to want to share it. They're going to want to just, control it. So that's the nature of the human. So it's risky business, man. It really is.
What do you think NASA's role is in all this? It seems like sometimes they're doing good things. I watch their channel, and then sometimes it just seems like a big distraction. Sometimes,
they have went from the can-do agency of the steely-eyed rocket men of the 60s that gave us everything. And now they've involved themselves into this smoke and mirrors bureaucratic cesspool. And NASA is not the space program you once remembered. It is gone. It's dead and gone. What you're dealing with now is just an extension of the military. NASA has militarized itself to such an extent. Well, they did away with the manned space program. Gone. Doesn't exist anymore. What agency in its right mind would do away with the thing that makes it exist?
I don't know. Like I said, I told you on the phone, David, I don't trust this. I mean, a Space Force sounds really cool, right? People are excited about it, but there was a lot of weird stuff going on before. I mean, the National Space Council was re-administrated. That used to be under Big Bush, who we all know is a CIA guy. They reinstated that thing. And then there's weird stuff happening in the sky. Musk is showing everybody new things, or, quote, new things. I think some of the stuff you'd already shown them. And now they want to do a Space Force, and they're saying, well, it's all about the satellites. But we do want to go to Mars. And I got to think there's something going on in our orbits that we're just not aware of. I'm almost sure.
Oh, man. Well, one thing for sure, going to Mars is the biggest bunch of bull. The reason why is because the sheer cost. To go to Mars, you're traveling not just 240,000 some miles over to the moon. You're traveling tens of millions of miles in one direction. You're going to be out there for a couple years at the speed that the rockets are moving. The cost right now of a manned Mars mission today in 2018 dollars is $450 billion, $500 billion. Who's going to come? Can you imagine them coming up? They were bitching about $12 billion to the farmers, which you absolutely need it. Now you're going to come up with a space program idea. Oh, how much is it? $1/2 trillion. Oh yeah, that's going to pass through Congress, isn't it?
Right.
I mean, none of it is feasible. It's not feasible. It's not feasible, not in technology, but in sociological scale. There's no way you're ever going to get the funding to get a program. They know that. It's distraction. It's smoke and mirrors. Hell with Mars. Go back to the moon. It's only 240,000 miles. And if you take all the area that the lunar rovers ran over in the 6 times we landed there and plot it out to the size, it's no bigger than a super mall with its parking lots. Now, take that super mall in the parking lots and put it on the continent of North America. Look how much area that takes up. Not too much. It's a big dot is all it is. Times 2, because you got the backside of the moon. And that's all we've explored. And they carry on like we done seen everything on the moon we need to see. And you've only explored an area of a dot, on North America, on one side. You don't know squat about the moon. Why do you want to spend something that you have? And right now, the plans are you're going to have to take all your food and water with you. Well, my God, at least when Lewis and Clark did their explorations, they ate off the land. Well, you can't do that with the Mars. You got to take it all with you, unless you do Dr. Zuberman thing where Mars Direct, which makes a lot more sense. But it's all smoke and mirrors. That's all bull. It's never going to happen. Let's talk about going back to the moon. You don't ever hear that on any of the national programs or media, do you?
No, but I would love us to. I would love to go back to the moon. I would think we should, for sure.
Well, there's something up there. I don't know what the something is. It's just like crop circles. I don't know what's making them, but I know it's real, and it ain't a Doug and Dave show. It's something really happening. science should really bear down on that thing and try to figure it out officially, make funding for it. They're worthy of it. I mean, look at those things. God almighty.
Well, there is a theory that some of these crop circles are showing us sacred geometry and high mathematics, or they're programming our subconscious with this stuff to progress our technology along. Like the Octonian thing I was telling you about.
Dave. Well, that's obviously not a Doug and Dave show where they stomp around with 2 ropes and a board. So when they came up with that answer, I thought, boy, I thought I could make up a lame story. I can't even make up something that lame. I had to make it up. But there's something legitimate about the crop circles. I don't know what it is, and nobody really got a handle on it. But the fact that you can look at those nodes and so much physiology's been altered, that's real. Mm-hmm. That's not imagination. So, but they don't want to look into that. It's like, it's just an urban legend. Yeah, that's a great thing. Label stuff like dismissed. Now, it could be something very simple with crop circles. It could have been a teenager from another world using the family car and having fun. And making and fooling the stupid humans down there. I have another theory why we don't go back to the moon. I haven't heard anybody talk about this one. I can pull a list off the internet. Anybody can. Do you know how much stuff we have left on the moon and we didn't even stay there? We have sent 400,000 tons of stuff that's laying on the moon. We have old spacecrafts. We've flown into the moon since the 60s. You got 96 bags of feces. Hey, astronauts had to go somewhere. All that stuff was left on the moon. Now, what if I came to your property, dropped 400,000 tons of crap all over your place, and telling you, I'm moving in next door? What are you going to tell me? Get off my property and don't ever come back.
Yeah, you're probably going to get a lead sandwich.
Yeah, that's why we got thrown off the moon. We have littered so bad, we hadn't even got there yet. So the message was to us was get off our roof and don't ever come back, because you guys are just pigs. And it may be something simple as that.
I don't want anything to happen to you, David, but I can't wait to see some of these patents you got. Can't you just leak one? You should just drop one out there to tease the public. Just one.
Well, I tell you what, I've dropped 26 on you, and y'all hadn't even noticed. They're in various areas of industrial processes. One that I learned from, well, let me put it this way. Here's something that I've got. It was an accident on Skylab in 1974. We had them use an induction furnace and had them melt molten metal. And they dumped the metal out, and there's this 2,000-degree glowworm floating there. And the astronauts called down and go, what do we do with this thing? and there's no gravity. It's floating. They're floating. And we told them, I don't know. I guess you just move away from it real slow and don't disturb the air current. And he went, what? He said, what if that thing floats over to the wall and burns a hole in the wall and we depressurize and we all look like linguini going out here? We're not going to be happy about this. And boy, they had some colorful words after that. So one of the astronauts was a little perturbed, having to sit around with that thing and waiting for it to cool down. So he plugged in a cassette tape of some music, and he thought he was going to listen to, big band music. He plugged in The Wall by Pink Floyd, and that vibrant rock and roll, the sound waves started moving the metal everywhere.
Really?
So I thought, that was what I said, really? No, actually, I went, holy shit! And I took off running. And I grabbed a mood synthesizer, and I constructed a 6-speaker grid box. And you know the lava lamps, the two dissimilar liquids, you remember the globs of lava lamps?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I put that kind of solution in there, and every wall is a speaker. And then I took a barcode reader and scanned my hand. And then I fed those scannings into another device I built, which is where my patent is, and I changed the mathematical expressions into sound expressions. Did you know for every shape in the geometric universe, square, a circle, rectangle, they have their own individual sounds, corresponding sounds in the sound world.
The shapes do.
So,
yeah.
So I scanned my hand, fed it into my device, and that big glob of stuff floating, which is similar to metal floating in a weightless environment because I'm in a gravity field of a lab. But when I played its song, the glob in the cabinet became a perfect twin of my hand. So now I have a way of shaping metal with stereo sound waves. And I tell you where everybody say, oh, that's nice. We understand that. Yeah, try it sometime, Jack. And let me know how the vibrato waves work. That means you have to interlock waves, sound waves, interlock them to shape things. That's a little hard to do. Try it sometime. Well, I did it. And I made a piece of metal on board one of the space shuttles. Actually, it was the Challenger. It was Columbia. And, Discovery. And the metal came back, and there was a big debate. And here comes your eggheads, right? All PhDs. Your metal will not be worth anything. They'll come into a gravity field, and they'll be like peanut butter brittle and just break apart. And I went, yeah, but did you consider this? When you look at the molecular structure of anything made here on Earth made out of metal, if you could look at it on a subatomic level, it's chaos because the gravity convective fields of the planet are always present when the metal is cooling down. And you've got gravity convective streaks. And you're only going to get about a 30-40% molecular blend. That's the best you get. But in the weightless environment where my experiment was running, guess what? I got a 100% molecular blend. And on top of that, I copied Mother Nature. She's smarter than I am. I made the entire nuclear structure of this metal honeycomb, the strongest structure we know. And so my metal came back, and it was no thicker than a piece of cellophane. But under a shear load, it has 1,000 times the strength of titanium, and it weighed less than styrofoam of the same size, and it's crystal clear. Welcome to 22nd century trans steel.
Are you telling me that you discovered? Are we going to be doing this here soon, and that you discovered that?
I made the patent for it. I own the patent on it. The problem is, I don't have a factory. You did away with the space trucks, remember? You put them in museums. I never got a chance to build a factory so I could put this process in there. What could I have done? Well, how about I can make threads of this material, and your child is wearing a jumpsuit, and she's playing in the front yard in L.A., and the Bloods and Crips got a territorial problem. They come by and spray the air with MAC-10s, 9mm flying everywhere. Your child gets hit about 10 times. She goes down from the impact, comes up crying because it hurts like bee stings. But she brings you these 10 flattened things look like pennies. That's some 9mm slugs flattened out on her body armor that can be machine washed.
Wow, that's amazing.
What I could do. But I'm not going to be able to get to do it because you put the space trucks away.
So what do you need? You got a mountain. You need trucks, huh?
Need to be out of the gravity field of Earth. That means I got to be in orbit. I don't have any place to go. The ISS is useless. It is just a big platform up there that does some experiments, but it's not set up for industrial processing.
Well, I hope somebody super rich or important is listening to this and makes that, because that sounds incredible.
Well, if you think that's something, you ought to see the electronic crystals I did. Do you know we grow crystals, right, for electronic devices?
Right.
And anyway, the problem you got, same problem the metal's got. The gravity fields interfere with the blending of the crystals, of the electronic crystals. when you do an X-ray of the electronic crystals, you see millions of gravity convector streaks. Well, guess what? I have the device that I built with Rockwell International, and we have a device that can grow crystals in orbit. And the electronic crystals don't come back the size of the ones on Earth. They come back 10 times their size, and under X-rays, the crystals are totally flawless. But once again, I built a Lamborghini in 1860. I need a space factory, and I don't have one. And I don't even have the space trucks now to get up to it. You put them in museums. So you wonder why I bought a mountain and went to my own lab? The hell with it. I'll just build my stuff and patent it out, and one day somebody's going to have to pay some serious royalties to my heirs because these things are transferable. So
David,
my lab is...
Go ahead, sorry.
My lab is filled with stuff. You should see some paint that I made.
I want to hear about it. We're already into the third hour, and I have to take a small break. Do you want to stick around and finish it up with us, or do you want to bolt?
Yeah, I could tell you what my Christmas list is. It's going to drop your draw of the things that I've done.
I'd really appreciate hearing it because I'm so intrigued by this. You have no idea. And I might take I know you guys keep calling, but I might take a couple of calls if that's okay with David.
I'd love some calls.
All right.
Yeah, it's just, we just now started down my list of my patents. There's 26 of them.
Oh,
that
good.
was 2.
All right, then. Well, we'll be right back with David Adair. You guys don't go anywhere.
If you have hard water, the Lime Scale not only leaves white spots, it clogs pipes and breaks down appliances, costing you hundreds of dollars in energy and wear. Eliminate Lime Scale and other water issues like brown staining and bad odors with HydroCare water products available from Wave Home Solutions. Wave's affordable water systems don't use salts or chemicals. You'll love the way your water tastes, smells, and looks. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
We've heard your feedback loud and clear. You called it out, and now we're answering. All new live programming, 5 nights a week. Always remember, the Fringe FM is for you, the listener, and we appreciate your feedback. Keep the feedback coming. You can email us at talkback@thefringe.fm, call the station at 501-777-5631, or send us a message on Facebook at The Fringe FM.
Message and data rates may apply.
Hi, I'm Frank Thomas, the Big Hurt. After I left baseball, I just couldn't stay in shape like I used to. Turns out, once you hit 40, your body has less free testosterone, and that can make it harder to get into shape. So I got back into the game with Nugenics. I'm feeling stronger with a lot more energy and drive. You want to get back into shape? Get Nugenics. All you have to do is send one simple text.
Frank's right. Just text STAY to 42424 to get a complimentary bottle of award-winning Nugenics, the #1 selling free testosterone booster at GNC. Its unique man-boosting formula is powered by Testofen, a patented key ingredient clinically researched to help a man feel stronger, leaner, more energetic, and more passionate.
And guys, she'll like the difference too.
Nugenic samples are not available in stores. To get your complimentary bottle, text STAY to 42424. That's STAY to 42424.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone app or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Who were the real ancient Egyptians? What is it about ancient Egypt that captivates us all? The critically acclaimed series Magical Egypt is back with all new episodes. Let Chance Gardner and company take you on another adventure through Magical Egypt in the new series Magical Egypt 2. Magical Egypt 2 attempts a forensic reconstruction of the science of the ancients through a study of ancient aesthetics. Also, the best researchers and authors in the field like John Anthony West, Graham Hancock, Laird Scranton,
Robert Duval, Lon Maladuquette, Aaron Cheek, and more join together to explore the topics of the esoteric and the hidden messages of the ancient Egyptians. Just go to magicalegypt.com right now and put in the code word FRINGE and get 10% off any download or order, including the groundbreaking original Magical Egypt series, as well as the new episodes in Magical Egypt 2. Also, check out the great work and the companion series at magicalegypt.com. Click the banner on the Fringe FM or go to magicalegypt.com and use the code word FRINGE and get 10% off your order today while it lasts.
Ahoy there, Gigi here.
And I'm Cortana, and we're here to take you on a journey through all things paranormal, metaphysical, ufology, and even psychedelic on our show,
Shift Happens, live every Friday night from 7 to 9 Pacific, that's 9 to 11 Central, right here on the Fringe FM.
And remember, don't feed the Archons, feed ducks instead.
Duck up.
To call Joe, pick up the phone, dial 1-800-588-0335, toll free from the United States or Canada.
All right, welcome back. We're here with David Adair. Fascinating topics we've been talking about. I could probably do this till sunup, but I'm not going to do that to David. David Adair is with us. AmericasFallFromSpace.com is the website. And I'm trying to open up my Outlook here. David, can you give out your the Facebook page as well for us?
Absolutely. My website is, it's all one word, S on America, possessive, americasfallfromspace.com. That's my website. You go to that. Also, like me on facebook.com/americasfallfromspace. And then follow me on Twitter at David Adair, at David T. Adair. So I keep forgetting those radio plugs because I get so into the conversation and people's questions are so good.
We got Gigi on the line here. He's got a question for David. Go ahead, Gigi.
All right. First of all, I want to say, Mr. Adair, I've been wanting to talk to you since I was in the womb. And it's an honor to finally talk to you. And like I said before, I've got it written down here. I have about 238 questions that I have for you, but I have all whittled that down to one question, or I've selected one question. Now, and that is, there's a video that a good friend of mine sent me, and it's this structural engineer who's basically what you might call a math nerd. And it's a 25-long-minute video. I want to send it to you because I want to get your take on this. But I've watched it countless times. I've also watched it through and paused every couple of seconds to follow along and do the mathematics with him. And essentially what he proved, in my opinion, beyond a shadow of a doubt, it's very obvious that the mathematics that NASA says on their website that they use to determine the mass of planets is absolute BS. It doesn't even make sense. In fact, the mass of the planet cancels out in the equation, which means that the mass of the planet doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter in multiple ways. For one, it doesn't matter, obviously, just the basic mass of the planet, but for two, the gravitational pull that the planet has, which is heavily based, obviously, on the mass of the planet. And it just really... and I think the only reason it hasn't really caught on to a lot of people is because it's a 25-minute video math lesson. I mean, it's just pure math the whole time. But if you actually, and not to brag or anything, but I just feel like most people don't have the attention span to follow a math lesson like that for that long. But if you actually do, it makes perfect sense. And it just goes to show that NASA, Russia, China, they don't know
anything, right? So are you asking David if the solar system is bunk, what they've been telling us, pretty much?
Well, I'm asking that. Also asking, have you heard about this mathematical exposure?
Yes. It's come up to me more than once before, and I've done it myself, and sure enough, it don't work. I had to correct several of their, they give you assumptions, and that's when you get in trouble right there. But, yeah, that man should be commended because that's a very difficult knot to untie, but mathematically. But in essence, I think it's a disinformation thing. I believe a lot of stuff they put out is designed that way. And they also know there's only going to be a handful of people that's going to even try to figure it out. So there's safety in it. But the average public isn't even going to give a concern about it. And it's really important because it will tell us a lot of things that we can figure out what is going on out there, because that was the way I could figure out the mass of the moon and the mass of the Earth. And mathematically, not their mass, but it just doesn't add up. There's just, an average person can just look at the moon and look at the Earth and look at the other moons. Look at Jupiter. It's got 56 moons. And even the biggest moon, Titan, is so small compared to Jupiter. And here, we said as Earth, we got one moon, and it's too big. The mass will never support it. The Earth has the ability to capture that and hold it. So
thank you for your call, Gigi. That's a good question.
Damn good question, Gigi.
All right, 772 area code. I heard your radio. Make sure your radio's down, but what's your name and where are you calling from?
My name is Robert. I'm calling from Vero Beach, Florida.
Thank you, Robert. What's your question for David?
Well, dealing on your patents and everything, I was wondering, did you ever hear anything about the patent from Mardosian, Aris Mardosian, dealing with brainwaves and satellites?
No, it's a little bit out of my area, but go ahead.
Well, I was wondering, these devices that people can also put up on the space stations or even on the moon and things like this to do with brainwaves and stuff like that, and I was wondering, the inventor didn't put his thing in until 2000, but according to the patent reference card, it had been put in 89, but that was around when the intranet was, before internet was World Wide Web.
Yeah, I had a friend pass away not too long ago. He was the commander of Apollo 14, Ed Mitchell, and Ed Mitchell performed ESP experiments all the way to the moon and back himself. And his findings were really quite profound. He was able to actually make contact with and hold the contact while he was doing that. And I told Ed, man, that's an area that should be explored a lot more deeper. And he said, yeah, he said there was so much data he got, he couldn't believe it. And Ed was a serious science guy. He wouldn't make him mission commander of Apollo 14. He wasn't a foo-foo person at all. But the area he was working in is considered that, but I think it's wrongly considered. I think Ed proved there's a lot of stuff that people can interact with. Sure would explain a lot of things that people have mental contacts with UFOs and all this stuff. It all would
the reason I ask about that is because if you were talking about AI a few moments ago, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, if this is actually according to the patent, and it was January 4th, 2000, that was the last update for it, it's already being used on satellites and manufactured. And it includes brainwave analysis and uses the control of brain activity from remote location, monitoring brain activity to compare pre-recorded brain activity and communicate substantial matches of patterns found to a computer at remote locations to determine individual. Yeah, I'm reading the patent.
Yeah, I was fixing to say, it definitely sounds like you're reading, brother.
Well, the thing about it is I'm a prior service military, and we got a lot of interesting stuff because I was a supply guy when I was deployed. And they did a lot of stuff when I was in Iraq and when I was in Afghanistan. And I worked in a warehouse and stuff that patent sheets that were attached to MRO forms and all sorts of things. I'm a kind of guy that keeps things, if you know what I mean.
Well, that's cool.
When I find interesting papers or, I'm a saver.
Well, that's a pretty good call. Thanks for calling. I appreciate it.
Well,
Roger
really.
that.
You have a good one, sir.
You too.
Well, I sure would give you a whole new definition of remote viewing if that was being incorporated.
Right, it does. That was kind of intense a little bit. 559 area code. Who are we speaking with, and where are you calling from? You're on the air. That's you. I'm going to hang up on you now. 559 area code. Goodbye. 1-800-588-0335 is the call-in number. That's 1-800-588-0335. There was a couple of people I hung up on. I apologize. This new phone system, I'm still learning it. But there's hold music there, so don't think you're being ignored. You're just in a queue. I'm not fancy with the phones yet, David. Sorry about that, brother.
All right. I'm extending into the third hour. I didn't even bother telling you this. I fly out tomorrow for Yelm, Washington, to do a UFO symposium.
Yeah, you told me about that. That's right.
Yeah, it's going to be. I haven't a clue. That's a different crowd. I'm looking forward to meeting them.
Well, I mean, that's another question I wanted to ask you about. These conferences and stuff. I've went to one, a pretty big one here at Eureka Springs. I don't know if you ever been to it, but the UFO conference here they have in Eureka Springs, and talked to Travis Walton and a lot of people. It was a really good experience. But there's some stories. I'm just going to be honest with you. The first time I met this community, it really threw me back. And a lot of people were like, well, what's wrong with Joe? Is he some kind of a jerk or something? Honestly, there were so many stories coming at me, David, that I couldn't take it all in. And I kind of had to run and hide for a little bit. Do you get that sometimes when you go to these conferences? It's like you're just being pounded with 9 million different stories.
Yeah, this is their second conference they had, and they learned something from the first one. I'm being assigned 2 hosts, and they're designed to keep me from being swallowed alive by the attendees. And so apparently there's I have been to a couple UFO conference, and you're right. The stories are just endless, and they come from every walk of life you could think of. And that clearly, you can't be, people. I try to get across to people who don't even deal with this stuff. That if that's smoke, there's a blazing fire somewhere that's causing all this activity, and it's not gone away. It's increased over the years. So, think about it. Somebody's visiting, and it ain't somebody. It's plural, and there's a bunch of them. And I get the people that talk. It's really unnerving. You'll be talking to a person, seem perfectly normal, like somebody had run a restaurant or something, and they'll be talking to you, and they go, "Oh, I love Mantovani music." I said, "Yeah, I love listening to it as I fly to Venus and visit with the Venetians." And I'm sitting there going, "Man, how do you handle this?" And they do it without blinking an eye. And the only thing I go, normal people don't do that, but normal people will do that if something extraordinary has happened to them.
Right.
And I had a really good friend named Bud Hopkins, and he passed away, but he would investigate these stories, and I'd listen to him on hours, and we'd talk about stuff. There's just too many people, too many stories for it to be bogus. There's real something going on out there. And And boy, some of these stories are just amazing. But a lot of them have similarities. One of the similarities that Bud discovered, and he documented thousands of cases. A lot of people get it through their dreams. And that might be a leftover from where they were programmed in their brain not to remember anything. And the dreams is where they can access it and pull it back, because they all seem to do it. Or not all, but most. So it keeps reoccurring. It's a reoccurring theme. But I always like going to these things because they have no clue about what I'm going to show them and stuff I'm going to do. I take a lot of toys with me. I have a thermal towel from the space shuttle. And it's from Columbia. Let's see, Columbia? Yeah, Columbia. The very first one, April 12th, 1981. I was involved with the Sunnyvale, California, who made the thermal tiles. And so I was involved in the thermodynamics of it. But I ended up with all these real thermal tiles that came from space. And I take this thermal tile and see what I make a living as I did for 30-some years. I'm a technology transfer consultant. And what that is we take stuff that's been designed for use in space, and then we look at it and go, how can we use it here on Earth? Mm-hmm. Well, a good example that I use a lot is, there's two of them. Here's another patent. When the astronauts came back in the Apollo capsule, they came in at 5,000 miles an hour. Well, you got to slow down because that's a rough landing. That's at speed even in water. So I thought, well, okay, put parachutes on it. The parachutes come out. You got 3 parachutes, each of them the size of a football field, and they'll slow that capsule from 5,000 miles an hour to about 12 in just a few seconds. Well, if you don't have a real shock absorber system between the parachutes and the capsule, the astronauts go out through the bottom of the capsule, and they ain't happy about that. So I looked at that and went, I called DOT, and they went, are you serious? I said, yeah, I can make this happen. So you see all these yellow barrels in front of bridges and guard barriers, and the movies show people crashing into them and water or sand come flying out of them. That's Hollywood. That's BS. If you hit those barrels full of water at 80 miles an hour, you're going to die just as hard as if you hit a tree. There's no give there. What they're not showing you is that if you look at them when you drive by, look down at the bottom, you'll see all these weird metal connectors and levers and stuff. They're all interconnected. That's that shock absorber system. And when I put that in place out with Department of Transportation, I saved 5,000 lives in the first year. You can hit those things at 100 miles an hour. That thing will absorb all of the energy, and you and your family will get out of the car. How about that?
You know what, man? I'm going to admit something for the first time on this show. I've never admitted before. And I don't know what it is. I've heard some stories. I've heard stories from blue chickens to ninth dimension globs, right? I've heard it all on here.
Right.
But I feel like you're telling me the truth I know you're telling me the truth about most of this. I just really feel like you're telling me the truth. I'm not even supposed to say that as a broadcaster. I'm supposed to, my coach, quote, coach, just stay in the middle of the road and don't take a side or whatever. But I feel like I'm getting the real deal here, and I appreciate it. I really do.
Well, that's what I do for a living. Let me give you another example. You got 3 astronauts in the Apollo command module, which is no bigger than a small walk-in closet. And these guys are in there. They're going to be in there for 3 days to the moon, 2 days at the moon, and 3 days back. So you got a total of 8 days. And they're going to get hungry, and they're going to eat. They're going to drink. And everything floats. You got a problem, a big problem. So they designed a material that could absorb all the nasty stuff and hold it in place while you're floating in your spacesuit, and then you take time to change your diapers. Well, I look at that, call Johnson & Johnson, and you guys get the disposable diapers. That's where they came from, y'all. They came from the space program from the Apollo days.
That's so incredible. Really?
Now, you can go to a place called NTTC, National Technology Transfer Center, a subdivision of NASA, and it's treated like an unwanted stepchild. NASA don't like it, and it's the best division they've ever had. It used to be headquartered in Washington, D.C. Now the title of it, and you can look it up on the Internet, the NTTC is found in Wheeling, West Virginia, Jesuit College. I'm not making it up.
Really?
And, yeah, they were moved from Washington, D.C. to Jesuit College, Wheeling, West Virginia. That's their official address. And they are the Technology Transfer Center of NASA, and they were ordered by President Kennedy when NASA was formed to turn their technology over to the industrials, the industries of America. And NASA hated it ever since because it was a mandate from the public, driven by the president, came into law. They had the facility. Then Senator Byrd, who's better known in West Virginia as the Pope of Pork Barrel, he moved that thing there, and his son runs it. A little nepotism. But it is the greatest thing that NASA ever turned out, the NTTC. If NASA should have used them as their mouthpiece to show them how much money they had returned back to the public, putting money, all that money wasted in tax dollars for stupid moon rockets. Well, for every dollar you put in, you got a $114 return. Show me that on Wall Street anywhere. Can't do it. That's how much you were getting back to the technology transfer division. And that's where I made my living for the last 35 years. I would transfer the technology out of the space program we used to solve the problem. I'd redesign it and put it in commercial applications. And that's where my 26 patents are lying. And some of them you've used, some of them you haven't. Some of them you won't live long enough to use because we'll have to wait till we build the gas factory for the Lamborghini. But nevertheless, I went through with experiments and proved that it works.
So how many things out there that we are using that you have the patent on, you think, right now, and we just don't know it?
You just don't know it. Well, let's see. I'm trying to think of something that would be of common use every day. Remember I mentioned something about a paint earlier?
Right.
I learned to do a molecular blend on paint, and Rust-Oleum. That's it.
Rust-Oleum. I've used that before.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people have. It's just
amazing.
People just don't put the things together. Like, what does WD-40 stand for? WD stands for water displacement number 40. It was their 40th experiment trying to find something that would disperse water and keep things from rusting. And it turned out worked so well for the military in the space program, somebody said, let's patent that. And they called it WD-40.
Well, I've got to ask this question because I don't think I'm going to get another chance to talk to somebody like this and ask this question. And it's a speculative question, sure. David. What is the Space Force thing about? What do you think they're up to, for real?
I think Trump has nothing to do with it. He really doesn't. He's probably inherited it, but he's the kind of nature of a type of president that would go for it. And it's going to be a big smoke and mirror routine is what it is, but they're camouflaging for, they're going to militarize the hell out of space. It's going to be your next battlefront. And I ain't talking about Russia and America going at it or China and America going at it. I think they're prepping for something incoming. And what makes me think that is that from a guy named Edward Teller. Y'all remember that name? He's the inventor of the H-bomb. He also is the inventor of the chemtrails, the spray nozzles. He invented them. His name is on the patent. He left us with another little toy. They were interviewing him. I saw him on an interview, and they asked a question, and he threw off the microphone and said, I told you not to ask me that question. He got up and left.
Wow.
And what they asked him was, and they just kind of ambushed him with it. They said, well, you invented the hydrogen bomb, yeah. And the narrator lined it up so perfectly. He said, if I did a nuclear weapon, atomic weapon in Berlin, Berlin would be gone. He goes, right. If I detonated a hydrogen bomb, pretty much the country of Germany is pretty much decimated. He goes, that's right. But if I detonated a, long day here, an antimatter weapon, the continent of Europe would be gone off the face of the planet. And he jerked the microphone off and said, don't ask me about that, I told you, and he walked off. He is working on an antimatter weapon.
I knew it, man. And see, that's what I was saying earlier.
And
that's
those antimatter weapons
me out.
Powerful. You can't use it on Earth. You blow a third of the planet away, we spin out of orbit, we're all dead. So why are you even fooling with it? Because that would be a weapon you would use for something inbound to your planet that intends to do you harm. You launch it out there. I don't care how big and bad they are, and they got spacecrafts that come and go across the, millions of light years. They hit an antimatter weapon, they're gone, just like us. So I think they're building antimatter weapons, and they're getting this whole thing that they're doing is for the delivery of they're going to put them out there. They're going to put out antimatter weapons, and they're going to put them in orbit, and it's going to be called the Space Command thing or whatever they called it. And that tells me that they got word or heads up, something's heading our way.
Wow.
So
that's so freaky, man. In a blink of an eye, we could be dust. We won't even feel it coming. That's the freaky part.
Yeah. Well, when I got in an argument with them about the fusion containment engine I'm standing on, now I told them, I said, this thing is not ours, it's not theirs, the Soviets. This thing is not even from the neighborhood, is it? And they're getting upset. And I said, well, this thing came out of a spacecraft, and size of comparison of proportions, that spacecraft had to be as big as a football field, and there was a crew. What'd you do with them people? Did you pickle them? And I said, and one other fact, the entire universe doesn't run on a Julius Caesar calendar and run a chronological timeline. They may live in a completely different realm, and every time one of our crafts went down in the Navy, buddy, we were out there to go get the pilot and the crew, right? We were immediately on it. Well, they may be immediately on it, and they're going to come here and try to find out what happened to their craft. And here you guys then cut it up and cut the engine out, pickled the crew, and I'm going to get vaporized by some pissed-off alien race that I know nothing about, and that's going to get me pissed. So Edward Teller kind of tipped the hat when I heard that and the way he stormed off. He's working on an antimatter weapon. Well, he's doing that. They're going to deploy it. If they're going to deploy it, that means they got inbound. They got something coming in. Isn't this just fun to think about, y'all? And this is coming from a guy that don't even really good at this stuff. It's just, I'm just following a natural flow of logic here.
Right.
And based on what we have available to work with and the reactions of people that's involved, like Edward Teller. So I'm sitting there going, holy smokes. But I'm like you. We could just be turned to dust, and we didn't even know. We didn't even get to question what happened. We'll just be like Dorothy, all of a sudden, this ain't Kansas anymore, Toto. We're somewhere else.
Well, here lately, there's been, I would say in the past 5 or 6 years, there's been more asteroid threats than a lot of people are aware of. I wouldn't say threats, but they've come pretty close. Some of them smacked Russia. I mean, those were like missiles when they hit them. And it just got me thinking about, Wernher von Braun, about how he predicted, first they're going to get a Space Force, then they're going to tell us that it's asteroids, and then, but I think, didn't he say they were going to do a fake alien invasion or something so they could get all this stuff up?
Yeah, and see, they're trying to prep you for all this is what they're doing. And it's so obvious, but average person don't know any of this stuff. But it is. They're prepping you, conditioning you. They also are in commercials. Have you noticed how they keep telling you, what would you do with AI? Rule your world with it. They're trying to tell you AI is loose. It's on the planet, and you're going to be meeting it soon, and they're trying to get you prepped for it. And you think it's going to be an Android telephone. Hell, it may be. That Android telephone may be an extension of the AI so it can hook into all of us at one time. You ever thought of that?
I think it's already happening. There's just too much stuff this thing knows already, you know?
Yeah, and and anybody brings this stuff up. See, I'm on a different subject area here in the third hour altogether, totally different from what I do for a living in science and stuff. And I'm telling you, the reason I'm making these statements is not because I'm some wild-eyed person listening to Montravani music on the way to Venus. I am actually using all the knowledge I've had and been exposed to and worked with, and now I'm just extending it out on a logical platform to see where we're going, and it's leading up to something.
And, you think we'll see it in our lifetime?
I'm afraid so, and I mean afraid because I don't want to be around. I'm 64. Hopefully I won't live to see this because none of it, I hate to tell you all this, none of it's good. None of it.
I heard the same thing last night talking to Jordan. He said, boy, I'm glad I won't be around in the next 100 years or so. I got a kid. You know, that stuff bothers me a little bit when I hear those things.
Well, I look at children today, 10 years old, and I'm looking at them. That bothers me because I look at them and I go, God knows what kind of world they're going to see. They probably won't even live through it. So,
well, what I want people to understand about you, David, is in 20 years, just like Eric said in the chat room, in 20 years, your story has not changed. And it's not about, I've got the same story and I'm sticking to it. It's about, we're trying to get to the bottom of things. And when I look at your story, and I've been researching it since I talked to you on the phone, I hope none of the other guests get mad at me, but I was just totally intrigued by it. Everybody that you've come in contact with you has validated, like that other woman I was telling you, and I forget her name, validated the things about her father that you knew. And it just makes me wonder what kind of tech they got going now. Everybody's like, oh, they're 60 to 100 years ahead of us in technology, and we just don't know it. And you would laugh when you think about it, but if you look at the progression of technology from 1920 till now, and then look at the whole timeline, something ain't right. Something boosted this.
Yeah, something like in the last 100 years, we have tripled the knowledge of mankind in the last 5,000 years combined. That ain't right. That's not even normal. In Star Trek, they would say somebody violated the Prime Directive. That's exactly right. Somebody's came in here and interfered with us. And they maybe gave the 1%ers all the good stuff. But we know too much, and the problem with that is that by having that much and knowing that much, that makes you a target out there. And let me tell you, you're just a big white blue marble sitting out in deep space, and boy, we shine like a beacon. You better hope somebody told me, oh, well, the Federation of Galactic Federation will protect. I hope to God you're right. I hope there's something out there like that because we're going to need them. Because when they show up, we have no way of reaching anything in orbit. We really don't.
I'm sorry, David. I can't follow the galactic thing. Look, I'm not saying that story is wrong or it's false or it's a lie. I'm not saying that. But what I like to find is substantial evidence would be great, but circumstantial evidence would be even better. And we've got none of that. When I look at your story, there's a little bit of circumstantial evidence there,
Yeah, quite a bit. Like you can call a judge in Maryville, Tennessee, the probate judge. Ask him who the executor was of the Colonel Williams estate. He'll tell you David Adair. Now, how did I Photoshop that? So another example is if you go to Ashland, Ohio, to John Ashbrook's Congressional Library, and you meet with the curator and said, can I see those letters of David Adair? Yeah, they're there. Pull them out. The first thing that you run into is the first letter. And this is in the Congressional Records, Congress, on its letterhead, signed by the head of security of Congress, John Ashbrook. And you know what it says? While John Ashbrook was out of the office, David, we're in the process of obtaining the Titan missile for you. Now, hold on just right there. What do you mean? Look at the date. The letter's 1970. I was born in 1954. How old am I? 15 years old. You're handing a 130-foot tall ICBM Titan missile to a 15-year-old signed by Congress? Don't you find that a little odd?
That's what scares me. When it comes to military, rocket technology, or anything that can really damage us or hurt us, they'll do anything.
Do you know why they were giving me a Titan missile? Because LeMay was trying to find out. He asked me, what you going to put your rocket engine in? I said, well, what's the biggest, baddest thing you got? Well, that's the Titan missile. It's in 1971. Actually, it was 1970. And so I said, look, it'll take a military transport crew to move that rocket. It's got twin 500,000-pound thrusting engines. Let me just go down and look at it. So I got in a car and drove to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and there it was sitting. And I'm looking at it, and I came back, and LeMay asked me, he said, well, how would our Titan rocket work for your engine? Let me answer that with a question. What's the last thing going through a mosquito's mind when it hits a windshield at 80 miles an hour? His ass. So I said, that's what's going to happen to your rocket. My engine is going to rip through your rocket and go clear out through the top of it. It will accelerate so fast. I have to design a rocket around the engine. And that's what I did. Wait till you see what Pistolin looked like. Man, it was something.
Now, I read this, and I could be wrong, but didn't you say that the alien engine that you saw, that you kind of, I'm thinking this was speculation by you, but didn't you think that they could move it with their mind or something? And I might have read that wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, you might. No, I don't recall that.
Telekinesis or something. But that wasn't an article by you. That was somebody else trying to critique you. So a lot of times they put words in your mouth.
Well, I tell you what. You want to know how I figured out shaping metal with sound waves?
Sure.
It came from the alien engine. This thing was the size of a semi. Not one single nut, not one bolt head, not one weld line, not one seam over something as big as a 18-wheeler. How did they put it together? It looked like it grew like an eggplant. It was made and casted in a weightless environment. And that's how I knew, and I copied it, and I stole some alien engineer's idea, and I patented it.
And you're just having a good old time, are you?
I am. I don't care whether people believe me or not. I didn't see you standing there when I was going through all this stuff. People like Stanton Freeman spit out stuff. Did this, did that. He does investigations by proclamations. So it don't bother me at all. I don't care. I was there. I know what happened. Not only that, I remembered it all. I have eidetic memory, just like old Sheldon Cooper. So when I walked all over that alien engine, I photographed that thing and remembered it with my head. And then I reconstructed it, and I took it apart and then filed patents on other things. So, yeah, I'm a cheat. But, hey, you're playing there.
You're a character, too. I can tell you're from the South, or at least you grew up there.
Oh, yeah? How's that?
Well, I mean, because you got all these sayings and stuff, and I'm around those people all the time,
I love it, man. It's, I was lucky to be born on this planet, but I was really lucky to be born in the South.
Last question before it's a good question, but why can't a gravitational containment field be built on Earth? Dan Lopez wants to know.
Stan, that is an excellent question. See how your callers think?
Yeah.
They really think and analyze. I'm just amazed at how smart the average radio public is, and this community. Some of the most brilliant questions I've ever seen. I learned so much from that. Well, to answer the question, it's going to be a problem. See, you're inside a 1G gravity field, and if you try to use that, you're going to run into it's a gravitational flow eddy that operates very similar to what you would run into if you had a north pole magnet and a south pole magnet. When you're trying to push them together, what happens? They push away from each other. If they're both on the two norths or two souths, they push away from each other. So if you try to build a field like that in a 1G gravity field, you're going to keep getting pushback to the point where you can't work with it. And that's the answer. It's like a resonant mirror effect, an echo. Did that make sense?
Yeah, we can't do much in this little ball of earth except do what the laws tell us we can do. And I'm
exactly right.
Hey, and, I love Mars too, but we should take care of this planet, I believe, instead of trying to get to Mars. Like, I don't know.
Well, all 26 of my patents are designed to help planet Earth. How about that? I don't give a hoot about the other planets out there. I really don't. And I don't care about the other aliens. There may be millions of them. So what? If they landed in my backyard, came over here and we barbecued and they took me for a ride and they left, I wouldn't tell a damn person. Not a soul.
Well, this conference you're going at, and I really appreciate you staying up with us. I hope you get some sleep on the flight. Please don't be mad at me.
No, I won't. I thought I had a choice of taking this or not, and I decided to go ahead and take it because I knew I'd be reaching a lot of people out there. It's just scratching their heads going, man, does that guy make you think? You know?
Right.
So, yeah.
Can you tell everybody where it's located so if anybody's listening from around there?
I'll be in Yelm, Washington. That's a strange name, Y-E-L-M. Yelm, Washington, and I'll be there tomorrow night, and I'll be there for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then Tuesday I fly out. I'll fly back home here. And they got me, man, they're working me. I normally do 1 or 2 hours when I go to the conferences. They got me down for 6. So that's a lot. But the reason I did that is the last group, this kind of group I encountered, they are so entertaining to talk to. And I thought, I'll do 6 hours and really sit back in the chair and listen to them. As you well know, you know yourself personally.
Oh, yeah.
They got stories to tell, and they're not shy on holding back. So I want to make sure I had enough time to get to them also. But apparently it's a big deal. There's going to be thousands of people there. So,
well, you guys make sure you go like the website, americasfallfromspace.com. Also like the Facebook page. I did. Go over there and give it a like. Facebook.com/America's Fall from Space. If you're around that, I know some people up there. If you're around there, go visit them. And David Adair, thank you so much for spending time with us. I really appreciate it. Man, we'll have to do this again.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun talking to the radio groups. It really is. But now I got to get ready and go do some more work.
All right. You take care. Thank you so much.
All right, you too.
Bye-bye,
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
David Adair, everybody. Fascinating conversation. Tomorrow night, Lisa Galarno, Experiencer, ET Experiencer, and Futurist is going to be on the program, I believe, for the entire bit. And for those 4 or 5 people I hung up on, I promise I'll never do that again. The button was red, not green. Anyways, the show was produced by the Fringe FM. It cannot be rebroadcast or syndicated without written permission. Music was by Chronox, Bundy, Space Station, Cassiopeia, and Kevin MacLeod. We'll see you guys tomorrow night. Good night.